The scene opens in the middle of a brutal execution. A voice drips with sarcasm and cruelty. "Hey, vampire," the voice calls out. A holy knight stands tall, looking down at a defeated figure. "Did you have fun hiding for half a year?" he asks, his tone mocking. The knight accuses the vampire of killing many people during his time on the run, calling him a filthy bastard. The vampire, Eugene, is on his knees. He is broken, bleeding, and impaled by sword. The knight continues his taunt, admitting that Eugene's hiding skills were a pretty decent trick that actually annoyed the holy knights. Eugene coughs, blood spilling from his lips. He can barely breathe. The knight looms over him, his shadow casting a final judgment. "But your role is over now," the knight declares coldly. "God will no longer allow you to do as you please." The knight is not done gloating. He wants Eugene to feel the full weight of this defeat. "Be honored," he says with a twisted smile. "You're giving me the title Vampire Slayer." He lists Eugene's crimes: deceiving the church and running away from punishment. According to the knight, Eugene's wretched appearance right now is proof of his sins. Then, the knight reveals a cruel secret. "Did you know?" he asks casually. "This entire time, we didn't capture you right away on purpose." Eugene's eyes widen slightly in shock. The knight explains that he joined the pursuit squad late intentionally. They allowed Eugene to run wild and do whatever he wanted for a specific reason. Because vampires are so rare now, the church wanted to make a show of it. They acted slow to gain more attention from the public. Eugene was never running. He was being herded. This execution was just a performance to warn non-believers. As the truth sinks in, Eugene has a dark realization. He thinks to himself, "I was aware that this is a world where only the strong survive." Eugene's internal monologue continues, filled with bitter regret. He realizes that everything in this world is decided by the power of the strong. It does not matter what he thinks or how hard he tries. The weak have no say. "That is why I ran," he admits to himself. He ran because he had no power. Pain washes over him. Was everything for naught? He wonders. The knight raises his weapon for the final blow, shouting that Eugene's very existence brings shame to the church's image. As the blade comes down, a desperate wish forms in Eugene's heart. "If I could have one more chance," he pleads silently. "I will no longer." "No," the thought screams in his mind. Suddenly, Eugene gasps for air. Huff, huff, his eyes snap open. His chest heaves with heavy, panic breaths. He is confused. What's going on? He asks himself, his heart racing. What just happened? He touches his body. I was split in half. He remembers vividly. Yet I'm still intact. He checks his chest, his arms. There is no blood, no wounds. I'm sure I died. He thinks, trembling. No, was that a dream? He looks around. The environment has changed completely. He is inside a small, worn-out tent. Recognition floods his mind. This is definitely the tent I lived in before the church's holy knights chased after me. Eugene looks down at his hand. He is clenching his fist tight, feeling the strength in his fingers. The reality of the situation hits him. This is half a year ago, he realizes. This moment is from before the subjugation squad started hunting him down. A question forms in his mind, impossible but undeniable. Did I return to the past? He steps outside the tent. The air is fresh, the trees are thick. If this is another chance, he thinks. He knows exactly where he is. This is the remote forest near Broadwin Village. It is a lonely place where humans rarely pass through. The narrator takes us into Eugene's history. This is where he survived by hiding from human eyes. He hid because he was weak. He was a feeble vampire who held his breath and barely got by each day. That is who Eugene is. Although he never naturally thirsted for human blood, he made one mistake long ago. He succumbed to his instincts once, and that single error ruined his entire life. Eugene remembers the future that is coming. In his memory, the very next day, mercenaries would swarm this area. Within 5 days, the holy knights would patrol the village. He remembers the despair of that time. No matter how long it took, they always found him eventually. For 12 years, he lived in fear. He survived by only drinking the blood of small beasts, like rats and deer, just to stay alive. He crawls in his memories, terrified and pathetic. But now he stands in the forest, confused but alive. How did I return to the past? He wonders, but he quickly pushes the question aside. No, only one thing matters now. His eyes narrow with determination. I can't make the same mistakes again. He knows the outcome of running away. Even if I hide again, I'll just meet the same ending. There is no safety in hiding. He comes to a firm conclusion. Then I only have one choice. I need to become so strong that even if they find me, they won't be able to kill me. Eugene begins to formulate a plan. Let's go with the vampire way. He decides. His face is serious, his jaw set. I'll change my survival strategy from now on. He explains the mechanics of his species. A vampire can absorb power through blood. It is a simple rule of nature. The stronger the owner of the blood, the greater the power gained. He moves through the forest, no longer sneaking, but hunting. He spots something in the distance. A massive, shadowy figure looms ahead. Here it is. Eugene thinks, staring at the creature. It's the master of this forest. Eugene analyzes his situation. He is still in his old body. With my current weak body, all I can do is avoid its attacks, he assesses. He knows he cannot win a direct fight, but he doesn't need to kill it yet. But if I can land even a small wound, on it, he plots, I could drink its blood. That is his goal. Just one drop of powerful blood to jumpstart his growth. He reflects on his past self. Until now, my entire survival strategy relied on me erasing my presence. He was a ghost, a shadow, but that strategy failed him. Eugene steps out from behind the tree. Now that I know hiding will eventually fail, I have no reason to hesitate, he tells himself. Desperation fuels him. I need power more desperately than anyone else. He lunges forward, his sword drawn. He aims for the creature. My sword, he starts to shout, putting everything into the strike. Suddenly, there's a loud crash. Quatch! The monster reacts faster than Eugene could have imagined. A massive tail slams into him before his blade can even connect. Eugene is sent flying. Pain explodes in his body. Did I underestimate this roamer's strength? He questions as he tumbles through the air. He identifies the creature. It is a roamer. These are not simple dungeon monsters. They are wild predators who wander the wilderness. Some roamers are special. They appear in regions with no magical energy because they carry mana crystals inside them. These crystals are treated more preciously than gemstones. Mana crystals are extremely crucial for roamers. Eugene thinks as he tries to recover. If I could obtain a mana crystal, the situation might change. It would be a massive boost. But the reality is harsh. But the difference in strength is too overwhelming. He realizes his mistake. Underestimated it too much. This is a forest master-level roamer. It is an apex predator. The monster glares at him with a glowing red eye. Its face is scarred and terrifying. Eugene realizes the danger. It could end my life before I ever land a single blow. Doubt creeps in. Maybe I thought that since I got one second chance, I'll get another, he wonders. Is he being reckless? Is he wasting this miracle? No, he corrects himself immediately. I've never overestimated myself. He knows exactly how weak he is. Eugene screams internally, fueling his rage with his memories. I spent my entire life crawling, holding my breath, doing anything just to survive. He remembers the dirt, the cold, the hunger. Now I choose to fight in order to live. He yells in his mind. The fear is gone, replaced by a burning drive. I'll fight. I'll fight and win. He understands the stakes perfectly. I won't get another chance if I don't win. There is no next time after defeat. This is it. It is do or die. The monster's mana crystals is glowing before the eyes of Eugene. Sees it. He commands himself. He realizes the truth of the world that the Holy Knight mocked him with. Survival has always come from standing on the blood of others. To live, something else must die. That is the law. Blood sprays as Eugene manages to maneuver. I promise myself, he thinks, gritting his teeth, that if I was given another chance, I will no longer run, that I will fight. With a roar of defiance, Eugene leaps back into the fray. He is done with hiding. He is done with fear. He declares that he will seize the blood he needs, and he will seize his victory. The dust settles after the battle as Eugene stands victorious over the fallen beast. He reflects on the outcome, realizing that while he initially only sought enough blood to become the new master of the forest, he managed to claim something far greater, the creature's mana crystal. He observes the crystal, noting that the mana contained within it is beyond anything he had imagined, possessing both a unique color and a substantial size. Eugene focuses on the new power coursing through him. The ability granting by the mana crystal allows him to transform his skin into hard, black scales. A strategic thought crosses his mind. If these scales are thick enough to block out the sunlight, he might finally be able to move around during the day. He recalls how he found this target in the first place. He had learned about the forest master through mercenaries. The wetlands were small and obscure, so few people knew of them, but monsoons had expanded the area, causing the master to emerge and attack the mercenaries. In that chaos, Eugene had managed to drink a gulp of the injured master's blood, allowing him to take down several enemies and escape. Realizing how effective that small amount of blood was, he had decided then and there to drain the monster completely. Despite his victory, Eugene remains grounded. He calculates that while he has gained power, it is still not enough to challenge the holy knight, Young Dirt. He resolves to avoid fighting a losing battle until he is absolutely certain of victory. He thinks about Young Dirt's terrifying reputation. The knight possesses an extraordinary skill that allows him to track monsters or the undead no matter where they hide. Because hiding is futile against such a tracker, Eugene decides his only option is to gather enough strength to counter the holy knight's head-on. He notices the time. The sun will rise soon. He decides it is too early to fully test the mana crystal's powers and prepares to retreat before dawn breaks. Suddenly, a voice echoes through the forest, mocking the dead monster. The voice laughs, celebrating the death of the fake master who had usurped the territory and turned the beautiful lake into a swamp. Eugene listens as the unseen voice continues its tirade. The speaker expresses disbelief that the fake died in such a pathetic way, but offers gratitude to Eugene for the deed. However, the tone quickly shifts to judgment. The voice declares that Eugene must pay for the sin of staining the grounds with blood. The entity introduces herself as the guardian of the lake and claims the territory belongs to her, Miriam. She begins to cast a curse, proclaiming that the forest and earth are enraged and that Eugene shall be ripped to pieces. But then, she pauses, dropping the dramatic act. She assumes Eugene cannot hear her, muttering that he is just a bald vampire, and that sensing spirits is a rare skill available only to a minority. Eugene abruptly breaks his silence, asking, "Who are you?" The spirit is completely taken aback, stammering in shock that he can actually perceive her. Eugene ignores her surprise and demands to know her identity again. Miriam, still confused, asks if he can truly see her. Eugene confirms it and adds that he definitely heard her call him a bald vampire. Realizing she has been caught, she formally introduces herself as Miriam, a water spirit. She explains that she was originally the master of this place until a crocodile monster took over 15 years ago, forcing her into slavery. She bitterly corrects herself, saying she was more of a strategic partner, as the monster realized it needed her to keep the water clean to attract food. She thanks Eugene, acknowledging that because of him, the fucking crocodile is dead and the place is purified. Miriam then brings up the past, mentioning she saw a bald old man get eaten by the crocodile earlier. She marvels at Eugene's methods, assuming that his previous weak, elderly appearance was actually a meticulous disguise used to lower the crocodile's guard. As she speaks, Eugene notices something strange on his body. One of his tattoos is disappearing. Miriam awkwardly switches to formal language, trying to be polite. She asks about the tattoos, wondering if they are symbols of a warrior or records of people he has killed. Eugene looks at his own skin and admits he doesn't know either. He has always had them. He reveals that from a certain point onward, he was simply a vampire, implying he was born this way. His earliest memory is simply having 10 tattoos on his body. Eugene explains that he cannot recall memories from his early days and had dedicated himself to living a quiet life, leaving him no time to reflect on his origins. He speculates that if the tattoos are spells or seals, perhaps one has been released because of the events of the day. Deciding he has wasted enough time, Eugene tells her to protect the forest well and turns to leave. Miriam panics, desperate for company. She complains that she hasn't had anyone to talk to in ages and that the number of beings who can see spirits is decreasing. She begs him to stay, mentioning that it will take forever to purify the swamp back into a lake on her own. Trying to bribe him to stay, Miriam offers Eugene a gift. She says it would be better for a pale, beautiful man, like him, to have some clean water. Boasting that, as a water fairy, her water tastes amazing, she claims it will improve his complexion. She then proceeds to vomit a stream of water directly from her mouth. Eugene looks at the offering with pure disgust and tells her to get lost. Miriam chases after him, shouting that she can purify any water instantly to make it drinkable. Eugene walks away, ignoring her. Desperate, she suggests that she can create more water by peeing instead of vomiting. Eugene continues to ignore the frantic spirit. The narrative then shifts forward in time. Several days later, the scene moves to Broadwin Village. Panic erupts in the village. A villager rushes to the village chief, shouting that the red-eyed monster has appeared. The chief is alarmed, but the fear turns to confusion when they see what the monster has brought. It is a massive boar, providing a huge amount of meat. The villagers whisper among themselves, noting that there is even more meat today than usual. They wonder if it is safe to take it, questioning what the monster is thinking. They note that he usually only comes once a fortnight, so this visit is unexpected and early. The narration explains the village's strange relationship with Eugene. He is known as the red-eyed monster, who lives at the foot of the mountain. For the past 10 years, he has lived near them without ever becoming a threat. Instead, he stops by late at night to leave dead animals, paying a form of tax. The villagers admit they cannot read his mind. Standing at the village entrance, Eugene politely asks if he may step inside for a moment. The chief, nervous and hesitant, agrees to let him in. The villagers recall that when Eugene first appeared 10 years ago, everyone was terrified, but they eventually accepted him because of the food he provided. This weird relationship has lasted for over a decade. Eugene greets the chief, saying it has been a long time. The chief stammers, asking if Eugene has something to say. Eugene explains that after a long time in isolation, he has finally been healed of his sickness. He claims he came to share the good news and to return the favor for the help he received from the village. He begins to issue a warning, saying, if something happens to this village, but he is interrupted by a voice asking, "Who are you?" Eugene ignores the interruption for a moment and tells the villagers to please call him anytime they need him. As he stands there, the villagers are struck by his appearance. Now that he isn't hiding, they realize he is blindingly handsome. They wonder if the monster they feared was actually a half-elf or a noble, shocked that someone so good-looking was behind the mask all this time. The scene shifts to an internal conversation between Eugene and Miriam. Miriam asks Eugene why he gave the villagers all the animals he hunted. She is confused by his behavior, believing that a vampire should want blood, massacres, and death, not charity. Eugene explains his logic. In the human world, it is important to show your face as a symbol of good faith. Miriam is skeptical, asking if he plans to be buddy-buddy with the humans instead of eating them. She reminds him that he said he was leaving in several days, so getting involved seems pointless. Eugene admits he thought there would be nothing here, but he was wrong. He declares he cannot be a spectator to the events that are about to unfold. He reveals the impending danger. Before long, mercenaries will raid the village and kill all the inhabitants. Miriam is shocked. Eugene explains the mercenaries' goal is to kidnap a boy and bring him to the castle of the region's lord, Sir Terwin. To prevent witnesses, they plan to massacre the rest of the village. Eugene's motivation is selfish but practical. If he doesn't stop this incident, the Holy Knights will swarm the area to investigate, making his future difficult. Miriam wonders if this is true and how he could possibly know. Miriam reflects that even though she has spent days with Eugene, she still cannot read him or understand what he is thinking. Eugene tells her she will find out soon enough if he is lying. He reiterates his plan. He must gain the villagers' trust first to appear harmless to them. Miriam asks what the connection is between the mercenaries wreaking havoc and him gaining trust. Suddenly, Miriam bumps into Eugene hard. Eugene stops walking. Miriam looks over and asks who the stranger is, the men commenting on his strange hair. The perspective shifts to the group of mercenaries observing Eugene. One of them guesses Eugene is just a villager. They are conflicted because they were planning to ambush the village. They evaluate him, noting that he is very pretty for a man and doesn't look like he has a proper weapon. They observe that he is alone. One mercenary warns that it will be bad if he screams and alerts others. They decide to kill him quickly and not give him the opportunity to make noise. Miriam calls out his name, Eugene, to get his attention. Eugene turns to them, a dark, knowing look in his eyes. He speaks internally to Miriam, telling her to think about it. He explains the final piece of his plan. He needed to gain the villagers' trust so that he wouldn't look suspicious. Miriam watches in awe. Eugene reveals his true intent. His plan isn't just going to protect the village. He is going to kill every single one of these mercenaries. The mercenaries, who had been lying in ambush, finally realize what they are dealing with. One of them shouts in panic, pointing out that Eugene is a vampire and not a human. Despite the fear, greed quickly takes over the group. A mercenary yells at his comrades not to be scared. He argues that this is actually a good thing. He calculates that if they can capture the vampire and hand him over to the church alive, they will receive a huge reward. However, the leader steps in, stopping a reckless subordinate from charging forward. He warns them that this is no ordinary vampire. He insists that they need at least his corpse to claim the bounty. Another mercenary, blinded by the promise of gold, swings his weapon, shouting that the vampire's head will be his. The leader screams at the idiot not to just run at the monster blindly. The reckless mercenary swings his massive weapon down with a heavy crash, shouting that he will smash Eugene. But the attack stops abruptly. Eugene catches the weapon with ease, shocking the attacker. Eugene looks up, his eyes glowing dangerously. He notices the environment changing around them. The sun is finally setting. A cold confidence washes over him as he declares that nighttime is his time. It is the perfect time to conceal blood. A scream echoes into the air as the massacre begins. The timeline jumps forward to the aftermath of the carnage. The village chief stands amidst a field of broken bodies, his face pale with horror. He whispers, asking how this could have happened. He looks at Eugene and asks if this was his doing, referring to him as the red-eyed monster. Eugene, standing calmly among the dead, lies without hesitation. He tells the chief, of course not. He claims he simply found the bodies on his way back from hunting while checking his traps. Eugene continues to spin his fabrication. He gestures to the scene, deducing that the mercenaries were ambushed on their way to Broadwin Village. He points to a large, dark beast nearby and claims these black wolves are the true culprits. The villagers are stunned to see black wolves in the area. Eugene explains that there were many of them, and he attacked while they were eating the corpses. He points out that while some wolves are dead, there were far more of them than the mercenaries, and the survivors might still be watching from the shadows. He reminds them that these wolves are infamous for being a nuisance in the area. The villagers inspect the bodies. One calls out to the chief, confirming there are claw marks on the corpses. Another agrees, noting they were all attacked by wolves. Although one villager finds it strange that hostile black wolves would ambush a group like this, the evidence Eugene planted seems to hold up. The chief bows his head, apologizing to Eugene for doubting him. Eugene plays the role of the forgiving hero, saying it happens and asking what they will do with the bodies. He claims he only told them because he couldn't leave the dead out there. The chief decides they must bury them in the village. Meanwhile, the spirit Miriam watches Eugene with disbelief. In her thoughts, she accuses him of lying every time he speaks. She knows the truth. The wolves only appeared after Eugene had already killed the mercenaries. Eugene himself made the claw and teeth marks on the bodies to frame the beasts. She wonders why he cares so much about his image and covering up his crimes when he could have just left. She realizes he must have a specific plan. Suddenly, a villager searching the bodies finds something. He calls out that he found a letter on one of the mercenaries. The villager examines the letter and gasps. It bears the seal of Sir Terwin, the lord of the region. The villagers are confused and shocked that the lord would send men here. The letter mentions a name, Felid. The villagers ask what it says, and the reader reveals that Felid is in the village. The shocking truth comes out. Felid is Sir Terwin's bastard son. The mercenaries were not just passing through. They were here specifically for the boy. The villagers are stunned to learn the kid hiding among them is a noble. The narrative shifts back in time to the heat of the battle, showing how the mercenaries met their end. A mercenary panics, wondering how Eugene is killing them so fast. He realizes that if they try to retreat, they will be killed anyway. Desperate, he screams for his men to fight instead of hesitating. He tries to rationalize the situation, shouting that even if Eugene is a monster, he only has 2 arms and legs. He commands them to attack all together rather than one by one. But fear has taken hold. One mercenary cries that his legs won't move and curses their luck that such a monster appeared now. The flashback continues to the final moments of the fight. The last survivor is on his knees, terrified and begging. He stammers for Eugene to stop. He asks if Eugene was waiting for them from the start and why he targeted them. The mercenary pleads, claiming they were just trying to get their job done. Eugene looms over him and demands to know what this job was, declaring that the village belongs to him. The mercenary apologizes, saying he didn't know it was Eugene's village. He spills the secret. The bastard son of the Terwin family is hiding there. People thought the boy went missing, but he was hiding his identity, and they were sent to find him. Eugene calls him a proficient liar. He asks for their real purpose, pointing out that there is no reason to bring so many people for a simple retrieval mission. Eugene accuses them of planning to erase the entire village to cover their tracks. The mercenary stammers, admitting Eugene isn't completely wrong. The mercenary reveals the deeper conspiracy. They weren't hired by the patriarch, but by Kamara and Vertel Terwin. It was a job born from political problems among the nobles. They brought so many men just in case things went wrong. Eugene's mind catches on the name Vertel Terwin. He recognizes him as the commander of the vampire hunter squad and a knight who harassed him in the past alongside Young Dirt. Eugene analyzes this quickly. Since Vertel is a knight, he likely wouldn't have ordered a massacre of civilians. That decision must have come from these greedy mercenaries themselves. The mercenary confirms Eugene's suspicion. They decided to wipe the village because a previous disappearance of a village caused a massive search by paladins, and they wanted to avoid that heat. He cries that he just thought it was a good opportunity and swears he never would have done it if he knew Eugene was there. Eugene seemingly accepts this. He tells the man to watch out for wolves on the way back. The mercenary is shocked and overjoyed, believing he is being let go with mercy. However, as the man turns to leave, Eugene's inner thoughts turn cold. Miriam asks if he is really just going to kill him like that. Eugene confirms it internally. The man knows he is a vampire. He cannot be allowed to live. The narration returns to the present with the villagers. The chief confirms the letter's contents are true. The dead mercenaries were guards sent to take the boy, Felid, to the castle. The villagers discuss Felid, noting he came to the village 8 years ago and lost his mother last year. Panic sets in. The guards meant to protect the boy are dead. They wonder what to do and if the boy still needs to go to the Lord's castle. The chief turns to Eugene with a humble request. He asks if Eugene, having lived long in the woods, could escort the boy to the city past the dangerous wolves. The villagers are stunned that the chief would ask such a thing, but Eugene accepts calmly. He states that a knight would never decline a chance to help. Miriam mocks him quietly, noting his skin made of steel allows for such bravery. The villagers stare in silence, confused by his choice of words. One asks, "Knight." Eugene apologizes for the late introduction. Standing tall, he creates a new identity for himself on the spot. He declares, "I am Jan Eugene from the Eugene house." In the background, Miriam screams in disbelief, asking who on earth would believe such a lie. The villagers are initially stunned, unable to reconcile the image of the red-eyed monster with that of a noble. However, the dynamic quickly shifts as social pressure takes over. One villager scolds another, calling them rude and insisting they should address him properly as Sir Eugene. Even if it is a lie, Miriam argue, denying him to his face is going too far. Eugene observes their reaction closely, noting internally that these people have likely never seen a real noble before. The entire village is in an uproar over the romanticized idea that the boy hiding in the mountains was actually a noble all along. Eugene realizes with satisfaction that even if he merely pretends, they have no way to tell the difference. That a villager excitedly asks if it is true that he is really a knight. They bombard him with questions, asking why he has been living secluded in the forest for over 10 years. They speculate that perhaps he was healing wounds received during knight training or undergoing some special discipline. Eugene feeds their imagination with a vague, tragic answer, stating that due to various circumstances, he cut all ties with people to live in the forest. The villagers accept this immediately, exclaiming "no wonder," and claiming they thought he was different from the moment he started bringing food to the village. They conclude that he was able to survive alone thanks to a knight's excellent swordsmanship. However, the reality of their poverty sets in, and they apologize, saying they don't have the means to reward him properly. Eugene dismisses their concerns, stating he simply wishes to rest and relieve his fatigue. He asks if he might stay in the village for the night. The host is honored, welcoming him to their humble home. The scene shifts to Eugene's private preparations for his journey. He reflects on the new power he obtained from the master of the forest, a skin reinforcement ability. He discovers that if he covers himself with these black scales, they can block out the sunlight to some extent. He calculates that thanks to this protection, there will be fewer problems while traveling during the day. His spirit companion, Miriam is less impressed. She floats beside him, scoffing at his audacity. She calls him an ignorant, night-dwelling vampire and asks what he was thinking by telling a lie like that. She points out the glaring flaw in his disguise. He called himself a knight, yet he cannot even read. Eugene shrugs off her concern, admitting he might get found out someday. However, since he plans to leave anyway, he believes it doesn't matter. Miriam presses him for his true goal, asking why he is suddenly making friends and taking requests after living quietly for so long. Before he can answer, a voice calls out, "Sir Eugene." The villagers announce that they are all ready and he can depart whenever he likes. Eugene notes to himself how quickly he gained social status overnight. He observes a fundamental truth about human nature. Humans sometimes trust a person's authority more than any fancy words. He realizes that while one can lie endlessly, putting a title or status in front reduces the effort needed to deceive them significantly. However, Eugene remains pragmatic. He knows this might be the only village that would accept such a hastily made-up lie at face value. Real nobles would be much less likely to just believe it. He decides that from now on, he must turn this lie into the truth. He has built a foundation of trust through his good deeds. The village chief hands him a letter, a statement of explanation, so that he won't be misunderstood during his travels. The chief stammers, asking him to take care of the young master. Eugene smiles internally. He has successfully wrapped his lie in real ability. The boy steps forward and introduces himself. "My name is Felid." He bows respectfully, saying he looks forward to Eugene's guidance. Eugene looks at the boy, his internal monologue revealing his true intentions. To solidify his fake identity, he needs high status. He looks at Felid and confirms his name, then reintroduces himself as Jan Eugene, saying he looks forward to working with him. In his mind, the thought is colder. He will use this boy to become a real noble. As they travel, Eugene points to a distant settlement and asks if that village is called Brahms, and asks, "You can read?" The boy explains that his late mother taught him how to read. Felid opens up about his past. He explains that his mother's status was low, so she never received a formal education. However, she told him that someone she loved taught her. Felid admits he never imagined that person would be the noble Sir Terwin. Miriam sees a perfect opportunity opening up. She realizes this works out nicely and decides to ask the boy to teach Eugene letters. Eugene asks Felid if he could teach him to read and write as well. Felid is confused, pointing out that Eugene is a knight. Eugene feigns shock and embarrassment, and Felid realizes the implication that the knight cannot read. Eugene spins a new layer to his lie. He claims that being a knight is just for show and that his family has already fallen, so there is nothing to boast about. He adds a dramatic flair, stating that until now, it wasn't letters that kept him alive, but a single sword. Felid is sympathetic, saying he didn't think the family was already in such a state. Eugene walks ahead, his internal voice reciting his strategy, "Doubt me, and then believe." He knows that once trust is gained, it becomes thick enough to cover every lie. Miriam floats by, unable to contain her amusement. She bursts out laughing, telling Eugene that his acting is top-notch. She mocks his esteemed lord persona, but warns him that if he overuses lies, people might start to suspect him. However, she stops when she sees Felid's face. She realizes from the look in the boy's eyes that he already believes Eugene completely. Felid apologizes earnestly to Sir Eugene. He admits that, to be honest, he was suspicious of him earlier. He explains that because the villagers called him a monster rather than a noble, he must have been biased by the rumors. He vows that from now on, he will judge with his own eyes instead of listening to rumors. Felid rationalizes Eugene's illiteracy, suggesting that coming from a warrior background, it is possible he neglected studying letters. He offers to secretly teach Eugene whenever he can, so that he won't be embarrassed in front of others. He then asks Eugene to tell him more about himself. The peaceful moment is shattered by a scream. A rough voice yells, complaining that he told someone to pull it properly. Another voice argues back, claiming they did it exactly the way they were taught. Felid stares ahead, terrified. He asks what is happening and realizes they are bandits. He repeats it in panic. "What? Are they bandits?" Eugene remains calm. He looks at the men blocking their path. He notes that, judging by their looks, that is probably what Felid is thinking. The bandit leader steps forward. He announces that this will be quick. He orders them to put all their luggage down. He demands they empty everything in their pockets as well. He threatens them, saying if they don't move there but quickly, they're going to die. The bandit leader starts to ask you, no, but his sentence is cut short. In a blur of motion, Eugene attacks. Eugene thinks to himself that he moved just the way he wanted. He is nimble and fast. The gap in skill is absolute. Chaos erupts. The bandit screams, calling Eugene a bastard. The scene becomes a blur of violence. Screams for help echo through the woods as Eugene dismantles the group effortlessly. Someone begs for someone. Help! But there is no escape. Eugene stands amidst the groaning bandits, looking down at them with cold curiosity. He reflects philosophically on the nature of violence. He thinks that he really can't understand it. He wonders why humans try to kill and rob those weaker than themselves. He questions if someone looks weak. Does that mean it is fine to torment them? He turns to the boy, who is watching in shock. Eugene asks Felid if, once he learns to read, he will be able to understand things like this too. Felid stammers, unsure how to respond. Eugene reminds him of his earlier words. He asks, "You said you would see with your own eyes, right?" He tells the boy he is free to believe whatever he wants about what just happened. But then, Eugene makes a solemn vow. He promises Felid that not a single drop of blood will touch his body. The scene opens in a bustling marketplace, alive with the noise of commerce. A merchant shouts to the crowd, announcing the arrival of rare, medicinal herbs from a northern dungeon raid. He loudly advertises the price at 20 bronze coins per bundle. A customer immediately pushes back, arguing that the shop down the street is selling the same items for half that price. The merchant defends his goods, claiming they are of a higher grade, while the customer demands a refund. Amidst this chaotic energy, Felid walks nervously beside Eugene. He tugs at Eugene's attention, warning him to be careful if he plans on shopping here. Felid explains that he has visited this market a few times with the village chief. He warns that the merchants are known for exploitation and that it is very easy to get ripped off. He recalls how the village chief always ended up completely flustered whenever he tried to do business here. Eugene dismisses the boy's worry with a practical thought. He tells Felid to wait for a moment, noting internally that he needs money first before he can even worry about being careful with it. Eugene approaches a shopkeeper and places a bundle of items on the counter. He tells the man he would like to sell this leather and asks for a price. The shopkeeper inspects the goods and is immediately surprised. He recognizes it as black wolf leather. He thinks to himself that one doesn't see this material much around here, especially not in such a large quantity. However, his greed quickly takes over. He glances at Eugene's appearance, noting the shabby clothes. He concludes that Eugene is not a professional trader, but likely a wanderer. The shopkeeper smirks internally, deciding that this stranger is easy pickings. The shopkeeper begins his act. He feigns disappointment, clicking his tongue and claiming the damage on the leather is bad. He asks if it can even be used, trying to lower the value. He offers a low price, saying it would be 18 silver coins at best. Eugene stands perfectly still. He does not speak. He simply stares at the shopkeeper with his intense, glowing red eyes. The silence stretches out, and the shopkeeper begins to sweat. He stammers, unnerved by Eugene's gaze. He quickly backpedals, admitting that black wolf leather is limited in quantity and has high rarity. He nervously suggests he could pay a bit more. Eugene remains silent, his expression unreadable. The shopkeeper interprets this silence as anger. He shouts that if Eugene is dissatisfied, he should use words instead of staring. Trying to salvage the deal and save his own skin, the merchant forces a laugh. He says he will be generous since it is Eugene's first time and raises the offer to 23 coins. Eugene still says nothing, simply staring. The shopkeeper panics. He assumes the price is still too low. He stammers again, offering to raise it a bit more to 25 coins. Eugene doesn't blink. The shopkeeper yells out 27 coins. Eugene remains like a statue. Desperate, the merchant shouts 28 coins. Internally, the shopkeeper is screaming. He wonders just how much more this bastard is trying to squeeze out of him. Finally, defeated by the silence, the shopkeeper offers 30 silver coins, claiming he absolutely cannot go any higher. Eugene finally speaks, calmly agreeing to do that. Later at night, Eugene sitting in the forest, looking at a piece of paper. To his untrained eyes, the writing looks like worms. He admits to himself that although he learned the basics from Felid, he is still far from being able to read properly. However, Miriam is pleased with his purchase. She looks at his new clothes, thinking they look pretty decent. She reflects that while vampires usually wear silk robes, for the money he spent, this quality was worth it. Eugene thinks the market was actually generous, contrary to Felid's warning. He believes the merchant threw in extra money even though he was a first-timer. Suddenly, the spirit Miriam appears, laughing hysterically at him. She asks if he means that pushover merchant. She recounts the negotiation, mocking how Eugene just stared while the price went from 18 to 30 coins. Eugene innocently asks if 30 coins is really that much. Miriam snaps at him, saying that was exactly the moment he should have pushed even harder to buy expensive silk. Eugene replies simply that he only needed something to block the sunlight. Miriam explodes with frustration. She yells that he should enjoy life a bit more and asks if he has just been holed up at home all this time. She lectures him, declaring that a vampire is the noble among nobles. She describes the ideal vampire life, living in a grand castle, bathed in moonlight, wearing silk robes, commanding servants, and drinking fresh blood like wine. She tells him that to rise in the world, he needs to burn with ambition so people will even bother to slander him. Eugene remarks that for someone who lived in a swamp, Miriam sure knows a lot. Miriam reminds him that she was originally in the spirit realm. She explains that seniors who made it big in the human world would visit and share words of wisdom that stuck with her. She advises Eugene that unless he is hit by a silver blade or a stake, he will live at least 200 years, so he should learn a bit of everything. She specifically tells him to study ancient characters and the imperial language. Eugene then pivots to mocking her, asking if she even knows how to read or do anything besides making drinking water. Miriam bluntly answers nope. Felid interrupts, looking confused. He asks who Sir Eugene was talking to just now. Eugene quickly covers, claiming he was just talking to himself. He changes the subject, asking how Felid's stomach is. Felid apologizes for the unsightly display earlier. He explains that when Eugene was preparing the rabbit, it reminded him of the corpses from the morning, and he vomited. Miriam thinks internally that it was a bit too intense for the boy. Out loud, Eugene comforts Felid, saying it is fine and that ordinary people aren't used to corpses. Felid then says not to worry, as I still have stamina left and the night is long. Felid mentions they have plenty of leftover paper, so he offers to let Eugene teach him as much writing as he likes. The scene shifts to a study session. Eugene asks if learning letters is supposed to be this easy. Felid is amazed. He tells Eugene it is because he is amazing. Felid admits that he was considered a quick learner, but even he needed a few months, while it normally takes a year. Eugene dismisses the praise as excessive. He asks Felid seriously if this will really be enough. He worries that just reading a little might not cut it once they arrive, since Felid is becoming a noble's child overnight. Felid looks down, admitting his mother never told him details, and he never thought about it much. He confesses that it still doesn't feel real. Felid expresses doubt, saying he doesn't even expect Sir Terwin to welcome him. Suddenly, a voice calls out, "Greetings, friend." Eugene and Felid turn to see a group of armed men. One of them says they are having trouble finding a good camping spot and asks if he can ask them something. Eugene analyzes them instantly. He notes they have proper weapons, armor, and formation discipline. He realizes these are real mercenaries, unlike the drifters they have met so far. The mercenary notices Felid and comments that they even have a child in their group. He asks where they are headed. Eugene thinks carefully. He realizes the man is asking in the specific way mercenaries ask questions. He decides that lying recklessly would only make them more suspicious. Eugene tells the truth. We're on our way to Lord Terwin's castle. The mercenary lights up. He says they are also headed to Lord Terwin's castle. He asks if they mind sharing the space. He offers to share alcohol, water, and lamb meat in exchange. Another mercenary, Rabin, speaks up rudely, asking if that isn't a bit much. He aggressively tells Eugene that they're going to share this spot regardless, and asks if there are any objections. The leader, Captain Partek, apologizes for his subordinate. He explains that Rabin only joined the group recently and doesn't know his place yet. He introduces himself as Partek and asks for Eugene's name. Eugene replies, "I am Knight Jan Eugene." He repeats, "A knight?" Skeptically, he asks Eugene if he expects them to believe that. He looks Eugene up and down, asking in what way he looks like a knight. He points out that Eugene doesn't even have a horse or wear armor. Rabin leans in, telling him to be honest and asking if he isn't actually a knight. Rabin continues his interrogation. He questions the name Jan of the Eugene family. He claims he has never heard of such a family and accuses Eugene of faking it. Eugene remains calm externally but thinks rapidly. He knows he already told Felid he was a knight, so he cannot tell a different lie now. He realizes the mercenaries approach them for a different reason than just camping. Eugene concludes that whether or not he is really a knight isn't actually important to them. However, his internal monologue turns dark. He decides that if they keep pressing him this persistently, the situation changes. He scans the group and makes a cold calculation. He notes there aren't that many of them. He thinks to himself simply, I can kill them all. Just as violence seems inevitable, the mercenary captain, Partek, snaps the tension. He strikes his subordinate, Rabin, across the head. Partek bows deeply, his voice filled with apology. He asks Sir Eugene to please forgive the rudeness of their rookie. Eugene accepts the shift in power instantly. He tells the captain that his apology is enough and orders him to just choose somewhere appropriate to settle down. Partek thanks him for his mercy. As the mercenaries scramble to set up camp, Eugene's internal thoughts turn serious. He realizes that from here on out, suspicion will come by often. He decides that to avoid pointless suspicion in the future, he must become a real knight as soon as possible. Away from Eugene, the rookie mercenary Rabin rubs his head, confused and pouting. He asks why he was hit. Partek clicks his tongue, calling Rabin an idiot. He asks how the rookie could rush at a knight like that without any sense of fear, calling him a brat. He asks if Rabin has no attachment to his life. Rabin is bewildered by the captain's fear. Partek tells him that he is alive thanks to him. He claims that because of Rabin's stupidity, they all almost died earlier. Rabin scoffs, asking what is so scary about that shabby guy who was only holding a single worn-out short sword. Partek sighs, frustrated that Rabin only judges by appearances and cannot see even one step ahead. He asks the rookie how much he thinks the robe the knight is wearing costs. Partek reveals it is a high-grade robe, padded with lycanthrope leather. He explains that even the cheapest ones cost over 10 silver coins. Rabin is shocked by the price. Partek adds that it is at least 3 times Rabin's monthly pay. Furthermore, Partek points out that they saw Eugene reading a letter, which means he is literate, proving he is no ordinary guy. Partek's voice drops lower as he reveals the true danger. He tells Rabin that Eugene was this close to actually drawing his sword. He states grimly that they all would have died, or if they were lucky, maybe one more besides himself would have survived. Rabin asks how he knows that. Partek explains the details of a killer's stance. He noticed that while Rabin was running his mouth, that knight had his right hand inside his robe and his left foot drawn slightly back. He describes Eugene as a person who can skillfully set his center of gravity to match the arc of his sword. He warns Rabin that if he had been even a little slower, the rookie's head would have flown off. Rabin stammers, asking why the captain didn't just stop him then. Partek looks at him with pity, saying Rabin has no idea how terrifying knights really are. Partek begins to lecture the rookie on the reality of their world. He defines what a knight is: someone born into an old, distinguished family who grabs a wooden sword from birth. They spend their entire life learning how to kill professionally. They willingly enter unknown dungeons, facing the fear of death to stab monsters. They head to the battlefield to cut down fellow humans while accumulating military achievements. He explains that only those who have stained their hands with that much blood catch the eyes of nobles and finally receive an official appointment. Because of this prestige, impersonating a knight is a serious crime. It is a problem if he is real, and even more of a problem if he is fake. Partek reasons that anyone bold enough to falsely claim to be a knight cannot be normal. Unless someone is extremely confident in their swordsmanship, they can't go around calling themselves a knight so carelessly. He asks Rabin to consider how few people who devote their lives to the sword actually become knights. Partek concludes his analysis. If someone who looks to be over 20 publicly declares himself a knight, that means his skill is pretty high. Rabin asks nervously if Eugene could be stronger than the captain. Partek admits, probably. Partek notes that Eugene said he is heading to Lord Turwin's castle. He shares a rumor that they might soon open up a dungeon that was discovered not long ago, and he guesses Eugene is trying to get in on that. Since their destination is the same, Partek knows they will run into him again. Nearby, Eugene is listening to every word thanks to his enhanced hearing. He is pleased to learn that the title of knight carries that much weight. He hopes this method keeps working, but realizes he will need more preparation. He assesses the group. noting that aside from the one guy who got knocked out with a single punch, the rest are all proper mercenaries. This puzzles him. He wonders why the Terwin family hired trash mercenaries earlier when they could have used competent people like these. He thinks they could have even sent their own soldiers, so something feels odd. Suddenly, the mercenaries panic as Eugene walks toward them. Eugene speaks smoothly. He mentions hearing that they're also heading to Lord Terwin's castle. Since their destination is the same, he politely asks if they would like to travel together. The mercenaries agree immediately, intimidated and charmed. They travel to Martella in the Terwin territory. Eugene thinks to himself that fortunately, they do believe he is a knight. He plans to use the travel time until they reach their destination to pick up some useful information. Later, Eugene considers the future, noting the problem is what comes after they arrive. The spirit Miriam appears, singing out Sir Eugene. She reports that, as ordered, she eavesdropped on the mercenary riffraff chatting. Eugene asks if she got any useful information. Miriam relays the intelligence. Lord Terwin's health is so bad that it wouldn't be strange if he died tomorrow. A new dungeon was recently discovered in the territory. If they manage to clear it, they can make a fortune. However, the Terwin family currently lacks both money and troops, so they are unable to open it for exploration. Eugene muses on the new dungeon opening. But Miriam interrupts with a serious question. She asks if Lord Terwin is going to die soon. What happens to the kid? She asks if Felid won't just become an orphan again the moment they arrive. Eugene dismisses the concern coldly, stating it is none of his business. Miriam is horrified, asking what if Felid just ends up dying a dog's death at the hands of his brothers. Eugene reveals his deduction. He says the reason Lord Terwin summoned Felid is probably because he wants to see his child's face before he dies. He tells her that from now on, his fate and hers are going to change in some way or another. Finally, they reach their destination. A massive structure looms before them. They have arrived at Rose Castle, Lord Terwin's castle. Eugene stares up in awe, remarking that it is rather bigger than he expected. Miriam hovers excitedly, telling Eugene he has to climb the ranks quickly so he can live in a castle like that someday too. Eugene scolds her to stop spouting nonsense and get back inside. Guards at the gate shout for them to halt and state their business. Partek steps forward and greets them, explaining they are a mercenary troop sent by the Palin Company. He asks the noble at the gate who he might be. The man introduces himself as Kamara Terwin, heir of Terwin and the eldest son of House Terwin. He points to the wagons and asks if those are their goods. Partek confirms they brought the goods safely. Kamara orders them to stop dawdling and start unloading. Then, his gaze shifts to Eugene and Felid. He asks who they are and why they aren't moving along with the others. Eugene steps forward politely. He introduces himself. I am a knight, Jan Eugene. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the air from behind Kamara. It demands to know what Kamara is doing right now. Eugene freezes. It is a familiar voice. He recognizes it instantly. The newcomer scolds Kamara, asking how many times he has to tell him that inspection of outsiders is his duty as the one who guards a castle. Kamara sighs, acknowledging the reprimand. Eugene stands paralyzed by the sound, thinking, how could I ever forget that voice? Eugene's internal monologue fills with dread and recognition. He identifies the owner of the voice as the man who first discovered him while he was hidden. This man was the commander of the vampire hunting unit who, together with young Dorit, tormented Eugene mercilessly. The name echoes in his mind, Knight Vertel Terwin. His past has caught up to him at the castle gates. The narrator introduces this man as Vertel Terwin, the second son of the Terwin house and a knight. Kamara looks annoyed by the interrogation. He scoffs and asks if he is supposed to report everything he does to Vertel. He adds a sharp comment, saying Vertel makes it sound like he is the heir instead of Kamara. Vertel quickly backtracks, claiming that is not what he meant. Eugene cuts the conversation short and hands over a piece of paper. He explains it is a letter from Chief Gev of Broadwin Village. Vertel is visibly shocked to hear the name Broadwin, but Eugene takes back the letter and hand over to Kamara. He takes the letter, his eyes widening in surprise as he begins to read the contents. Kamara reads the letter with disbelief. He mutters that he can't believe it. The letter claims that the mercenaries sent to the village were ambushed by wolves, and every single one of them died. He turns his gaze to the young boy standing nearby. He asks if the kid they brought is the bastardized son mentioned in the report. Felid steps forward with a bright, innocent smile. He introduces himself, saying, hello, I'm Felid, Kamara's demeanor changes instantly to a performative friendliness. He says, "Oh ho, so you're our new brother?" He claims that they have been waiting for him. He says smoothly, stating that their father is very eager to see Felid. Vertel immediately starts barking orders to the servants. He commands someone to take Felid, wash him, and dress him in proper clothes. The servants scramble to obey, saying, "Yes, sir." As they try to lead the confused boy away, a voice cuts through the noise. Eugene steps forward and orders them to wait. Vertel stops and looks at Eugene with irritation. Eugene stands his ground against the noble. He states firmly that he wants to talk about the reward first. He demands that Vertel let him meet Sir Terwin. Vertel rejects the request instantly, saying he cannot allow it. Eugene presses him, asking if he can't meet him even for a bit. Vertel makes an excuse. He explains that their father is not well right now. He tells Eugene he will pay the reward in golden coins, so Eugene should just go back now. Eugene narrows his eyes. He reminds Vertel that he worked pretty hard to bring his brother here. Vertel's voice drops lower as he warns Eugene not to make him repeat himself. Suddenly, Kamara shouts out in protest, asking why not, and calling out to brother. Kamara argues that they have to introduce the new brother to their father anyway. He asks what is wrong with seeing father for a little bit. Vertel sighs, pretending to be reasonable. He explains that father cannot even stay awake for an hour during the day. He insists they cannot let him meet a random stranger during that precious time. Kamara mocks Vertel, asking if he is now going to control their father's schedule too. Vertel snaps back at Kamara, warning him about twisting his words. Kamara then turns to Eugene with a fake apology. He says he is really sorry about that, Sir Eugene. Eugene notes the mocking emphasis on Sir. Kamara continues, saying it seems Eugene won't be able to see their father because Vertel wants to roleplay being the heir. He dismisses Eugene, telling him to please make it home safely. Kamara decides to take over. He tells the new brother that he will show him around. He suggests they look around the castle first. Felid agrees quietly. As Eugene watches them, he realizes the truth. Kamara wasn't going to let him meet the father from the start. The scene shifts to a corridor inside the castle. Someone calls out to second son Terwin, but then realizes he is speaking to someone else. He finds the person he was looking for. The man he finds is a large, intimidating figure. The man asks what is going on. That intimidating figure gestures to the mercenaries. He claims they are mercenaries that were stealing from the villagers. He says they were lazing around instead of training, so he brought them here. The large man asks Vertel if they shouldn't kill one, as an example. He mentions he knows they were temporarily hired for the dungeon raid. Vertel quickly changes the subject. He tells the large man that he will talk to the mercenaries himself later. The man agrees. Vertel suggests they talk inside, because there are too many people listening here. Partek observes this interaction from a distance and identifies the large man. He is Sir Galfredic. Eugene asks Partek, "You know him?" Partek explains that Galfredic is a knight with a bright future ahead of him. He placed third in a tournament hosted by the Evergrove family recently. Partek notes that Galfredic has monstrous strength and the skills to back it up. He recalls that on that day, Galfredic swept through more than 1,000 competitors. Eugene wonders what someone like that is doing here. He assumes it is because of the newly discovered dungeon. He explains that even though this area is far from the capital, it is considered a great achievement for a knight to successfully open a dungeon. He emphasizes how difficult it is, noting that many people lose their lives. Partek deduces that Sir Galfredic is planning to use this dungeon as a stepping stone to get hired by a bigger family. Eugene turns his attention back to the mercenary captain, Partek. He calls out, "Hey, Partek." Partek answers nervously. Eugene asks if their job is done now. Eugene then makes a surprising request. He asks if he can be their client next. Later at the night, Kamara sits alone, consumed by anxiety. He paces nervously, thinking about the dungeon. Kamara speaks with desperation. He states that he must open this dungeon this time. He explains that his younger brother, Vertel, has been openly going after the successor position ever since their father's health declined. He points out that Vertel brought Sir Galfredic here through his connections. Kamara assumes Vertel is trying to open the dungeon. If Vertel does that, everyone will be rooting for him. Kamara admits he is stuck. He wonders how he will do this because he can't just hire some random people. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Kamara is startled from his worrying. A servant enters and announces that Sir Eugene is requesting to see Kamara. Kamara is surprised, asking if it is the knight that brought Felid earlier. He orders the servant to let him in. Eugene walks in. Kamara welcomes him warmly, calling him Sir Eugene. Kamara immediately assures him that he doesn't need to worry about Felid. He promises they are making sure the boy is safe. He invites Eugene to take a seat. Kamara adds that once his father is awake, he will reward Eugene for bringing the boy safely too. Kamara changes his tone to one of gratitude. He tells Eugene he was really grateful when he gave him the letter earlier. He admits it made him feel better. Eugene replies calmly that he is glad. However, Eugene clarifies his position. He says he only has business with the lord of this estate, so he was a bit taken aback when a third party intervened. Kamara looks intrigued. Kamara gets to the point. He asks Eugene what he wants. He guesses that Eugene wants his identity certified by meeting the father. Eugene admits that is true, but adds that he wanted to offer Kamara something. Eugene drops his proposal. Include me in the dungeon raid. Kamara laughs, saying Eugene is a lot more interesting than he thought. He recalls Eugene claiming to be a knight. He mentions hearing that Eugene killed about 5 robbers. Kamara speculates that Eugene is trying to better his image by participating in the raid. He then asks skeptically if there is a reason he should let Eugene join. Eugene answers confidently. He says Kamara should accept because it is an offer that won't do him any harm. Kamara asks what he means. Eugene lays out his terms. He states that if the dungeon opening succeeds, he and his mercenaries will be paid a total of 100 silver coins. Additionally, they will receive half of the byproducts, but this explicitly excludes the valuable mana crystals. Kamara narrows his eyes, admitting that the offer is so not bad that it actually becomes suspicious. He asks Eugene if he realizes that this price is well below the average market rate. Impatiently, Eugene demands to know if Kamara likes the offer or not. As Eugene waits for an answer, Kamara analyzes Eugene's appearance. He thinks to himself that knights are people who live and die by honor. Judging by Eugene's outfit, Kamara concludes that he seems to be a wandering knight with no noble house backing him. Despite this lack of backing, Eugene does not appear greedy for money. Kamara decides that honor must truly come first for this man. Eugene, maintaining his composure, simply replies that he is not the one in a hurry here. He points a finger at Kamara and states firmly, "You are." Kamara is visibly shaken by the accuracy of the statement. Kamara realizes he has been outmaneuvered. He thinks to himself that this man knows exactly which card to play. He observes that Eugene is different from the typical knights whose brains are made of nothing but muscle. Making his decision, Kamara agrees. He states very well, seeing no reason to turn down such a decent opportunity. He bows slightly and says he looks forward to working with Sir Eugene. Eugene then explains the logic behind his low price to solidify the deal. He explains that mana crystals are hard to purify. He points out that the commission fees for that process are very high. In contrast, the monster byproducts can be sold at full value just as they are, making them far more profitable for a wanderer like him. In previous conversation, Partek adds that he will introduce Eugene to a trading company he knows well. He instructs Eugene to simply tell Kamara that he will only be taking the byproducts. Partek is confident that if he frames it this way, Sir Kamara will have no choice but to accept the proposal. Later the deal done, a loud, scoffing voice interrupts them. Galfredic steps forward, snorting, humph, and calling the situation ridiculous. Vertel demands to know if Kamara really wants to add a new member to the subjugation party right now. He mocks Kamara, observing that he is desperately flailing at the last minute. Galfredic lectures them, stating that a dungeon is not a playground for children. He warns that the moment someone falls even slightly behind, they are left for dead. He describes the dungeon as a place where only life and death exist. He declares firmly that if a new recruit is some half-baked amateur who will hinder their advance, he is against it. Vertel looks annoyed, but tries to deflect the hostility. He admits that since Eugene is a knight Kamara recruited himself, he doesn't hold any high expectations either. Vertel explains his difficult position, noting that Kamara doesn't get along with the neighboring nobility and his connections aren't exactly broad. Vertel tells to the Galfredic that if it comes down to it, he would like him Galfredic to tell himself. Galfredic asks why Vertel is dumping the responsibility on him. Kamara apologizes for keeping them waiting after calling them here. He explains he was chatting briefly with his new knight. He then proceeds to introduce them. Kamara gestures to Eugene. He introduces him as the knight who will be joining this subjugation party, Knight Jan Eugene. He also points out the group behind Eugene, introducing them as his mercenary band. Vertel and Galfredik react with shock. They recognize Eugene immediately, whispering that he is the man from before. They are surprised to learn that he is leading a mercenary band on top of being a knight. Vertel steps up to Kamara. He speaks with all due respect, but remains firm. He states that they cannot accept someone whose origins and skills are both unknown. Kamara repeats the word origins thoughtfully. However, Kamara asserts that at the very least, he can vouch for Eugene's skill. Kamara begins to tell a story to prove his point. He mentions that he actually heard something from Eugene earlier. It concerns a bandit group that was causing trouble out on the edge of the territory. Kamara reminds Galfredik of the group, noting that they were quite a headache for them. Kamara reveals the impressive feat. He explains that on his way here, Sir Eugene took care of those bandits with nothing but a short sword. Kamara looks at Galfredik and argues that with skills like that, he would say Eugene is more than good enough. He asks Galfredik if he wouldn't agree. Galfredik threw short sword towards Eugene. Eugene sees the sword last moment and deflect with his sword. Galfredik smiles arrogantly, and Galfredik reacts with a sarcastic, "Oh wow." He bows slightly, offering a mock apology for his rudeness upon their first meeting. However, his tone shifts immediately to one of judgment. Galfredik looks Eugene up and down. He comments on Eugene's appearance, noting his unscarred skin and the lack of sunburn. He concludes that Eugene seems to have grown up quite sheltered. With a challenging grin, Galfredik asks the young master if he could let him see his skills personally. The narrators shift to the escalation. Sir Galfredik wants to duel. The spectators are stunned. One of them shouts, asking if they are really doing this right now. Another mercenary is excited, suggesting they go see how good the knight who placed third in the tournament really is. The gossip about Galfredik begins to fly. A mercenary claims that Galfredik is so strong he can tear monsters apart with his bare hands. Another wonders if he is even human. Looking at Eugene, a spectator remarks that whoever his opponent is, he is starting to feel a bit sorry for him. Galfredik draws his massive sword. The duel is set. The signal is given to begin. The referee shouts ready. Instantly, the clash begins with the sharp sound of metal striking metal. Sparks fly as the swords collide. The mercenaries watching the fight start a cheer. Rabin shouts that it is, as expected, of Sir Eugene. Rabin notes that Sir Eugene appears to be pushing Galfredik back completely. However, Partek corrects the crowd. He observes that Galfredik isn't being pushed back at all. He explains that Galfredik is simply sizing his opponent up. He states that Sir Galfredik is letting himself be pushed back intentionally to analyze Eugene. Inside the fight, Galfredik is doing exactly that. He analyzes Eugene's movements with a critical eye. He thinks to himself that Eugene's swordsmanship is cruder than he expected. He tries to find a pattern, but realizes there is no particular habit to grasp onto. He cannot tell what Eugene's style is at all. Galfredik concludes that Eugene is not exactly a polished swordsman. However, he senses something else. He notes that Eugene gives off the vibes of someone who grew up in the wild. Galfredik blocks a strike and smiles, his suspicions confirmed. He says to himself, "As I thought." He looks directly at Eugene and accuses him, stating that his claim of being a knight is a lie. Wasn't it? Galfredik begins to dissect Eugene's technique with brutal honesty. He points out that Eugene's swordsmanship is rootless and his stance is sloppy. He asserts that Eugene has never been properly trained and is simply relying on his raw physical abilities to get by. Galfredik admits that while one cannot say swordsmanship is everything to a knight, one can generally tell the truth of a man's skill after exchanging just a few blows. Eugene, holding his weapon ready, does not deny the lack of formal training. Instead, he focuses on the present reality of the duel. He snaps back at the large knight, telling him that he sure talks a lot. Eugene issues a simple challenge. If he beats Galfredik, the man will have to shut up. The verbal sparring ends abruptly. Galfredik moves with blinding speed. Eugene's eyes widen in shock, represented by exclamation marks, as he barely has time to process the movement. The clash is instantaneous. A sound of impact echoes through the air as Galfredik strikes. Eugene grunts, caught off guard by the sheer velocity of the attack. The fight escalates into a blur of motion. The impact of the blows creates a shockwave that rattles the onlookers. The mercenaries watching from the sidelines are stunned. Vertel shouts out, asking if Eugene passed out. In the heat of the duel, Galfredik is realizing that, as he trades blows with Eugene, he notices something terrifying. Eugene is adapting. Galfredik realizes with a shock that his opponent learns fast. Eugene strikes, and Galfredik is forced to block. The sheer weight of the attack sends a shockwave through him. Galfredik grits his teeth, struggling to hold his ground against the onslaught. Galfredik is pushed back, sliding across the ground. He laughs, but there is a hint of disbelief in his voice. He looks at Eugene, trying to understand the physics of what is happening. He notes that Eugene's build is smaller than his own, yet he cannot comprehend how Eugene possesses such strength. Galfredik is a proud man, but he is not delusional. He decides to accept the reality of the situation. He acknowledges internally that in terms of raw strength, Eugene overwhelmingly surpasses him. However, he refuses to lose. He tells himself that he is superior in terms of experience. He adjusts his footing, preparing to use his superior technique to overcome the brute force. He focuses on his stance, ready to counterattack. The fight continues, but Galfredik's technique is failing him. He watches Eugene move and realizes the chaotic nature of his opponent. There is not a single precise movement in Eugene's fighting style. It is messy and untamed. But that messiness is backed by something more dangerous. Galfredik observes Eugene's rapid learning ability and a crisis response driven entirely by survival instinct. It is not the fighting style of a knight. It is the fighting style of a survivor. Galfredik wonders in awe just where this guy rolled in from. He realizes he is fighting a force of nature, not a swordsman. The duel ends decisively. Galfredik is on the ground, defeated. He does not make excuses. He knows clearly and says himself that, "This is my loss." The crowd is stunned into silence. The referee, or perhaps the announcer, stammers, struggling to get the words out. He announces the winner is Knight Jan Eugene. The crowd of mercenaries erupts into noise. They're in disbelief. One shouts, asking what the hell is up with that knight. Another exclaims that he is insanely strong. A third mercenary yells that he has never heard the name Jan Eugene before. Amidst the confusion, Rabin laughs heartily. He points at Eugene and asks them if they see that. He proudly declares that the man right there is our knight. Captain Partek comments dryly that this guy is already slapping an hour into his sentences, showing how quickly he have accepted the Eugene as one of their own. The chant begins. The mercenaries start yelling Eugene's name in unison. Jan Eugene, Jan Eugene. The unexpected happens, that Galfredik joins and calls out, asking the crowd to give up their applause for the winner of the night. The name echoes through the training grounds as Eugene stands victorious. However, Vertel looks confused in anger, staring at the cheering crowd, unsure why they are celebrating him so intensely. The narrative shifts to the aftermath. From that day on, the people's gazes toward Eugene changed 180 degrees. The scene moves to a hallway the next morning. Kamara Terwin approaches Eugene with a bright, overly friendly demeanor. He calls out, asking who this might be. He laughs and exclaims, "Isn't this my capable knight, Sir Jan Eugene?" He asks Eugene politely if he slept well last night. Eugene answers somewhat coldly, saying he slept well enough. Kamara ignores the tone and brings up a specific point. He notes that, more importantly, it seems Eugene refused all the amenities he sent him. Before Eugene can answer, a booming voice interrupts them. "Sir Eugene, did you call for me?" Eugene thinks to himself that he quite likes this one. It is mercenary Rabin, and Galfredik wraps an arm around Eugene, calling him his friend and comrade in arms. Eugene, uncomfortable with the physical contact, tells Sir Galfredik not to cling on to him so much. Galfredik asks Eugene if he slept well. Then, pointing to his own face, Galfredik complains that his face is still throbbing and he could hardly sleep at all. He yells happily, asking if Eugene can't see his bruised blue face. Eugene laughs internally, wondering if the man wants to get hit more. Undeterred by his injuries, Galfredik asks if Eugene is free today as well. He remarks that the weather is nice and suggests they have another sparring match. Eugene observes the situation, thinking to himself that Galfredik doesn't seem to care at all whether he is really a knight or not. He only cares about the strength. Later, inside Eugene's quarters, a group of servants bustle about. One servant announces that they have Lord Kamara Terwin's orders. He explains that since Eugene must eat and rest well in order to open the dungeon, he is tasked with personally seeing to Eugene's meals in detail. Another servant adjusts the room. He asks how the lighting is. He explains that they have drawn the curtains tightly, as they heard Eugene has sensitive skin. Another servant offers to recommend some wine if Eugene tells him his taste. Miriam watches them, realizing the trap he is in. She chuckles darkly to herself. She knows he can't exactly say that vampires don't need food. She thinks that if he eats all of this human food, he might get a stomachache. Eugene decides to assert control. He tells the servants that he will just accept the sentiment. He announces that from next time, he will take care of his meals himself. So he orders everyone to please withdraw. The servants hesitate, stammering, but Eugene cuts them off. He commands them to go tell Sir Kamara this message word for word. I prefer being alone. Eugene stands alone, reflecting on his progress. He notes that even those who doubted him initially are, one by one, letting go of their suspicions. He acknowledges that this is the result he wanted. However, he admits to himself that even after several days, he still hasn't gotten used to people swarming around him. His thoughts are interrupted by Galfredic, who is still eager for a fight. Eugene looks at him and remarks that it looks like Galfredic really does want to get hit again. Galfredic laughs confidently, shouting that you never know until you cross swords. Just then, a voice calls out to him. It's Felid, the young boy. His face is beaten up. He greets Eugene with a lonely smile, asking, Sir Eugene, have you been well? The scene opens in a dark, secluded room within the castle. The air is filled with the agonizing screams of a servant who has failed his master. The man begs for his life, crying out that he was wrong, but his pleas fall on deaf ears. Standing over him is Vertel Terwin, the second son of the house. He looks down with cold disdain. He tells the servant that if he had just done his job properly, this mess would never have happened. Vertel explains the simple instruction that was ignored. If the servant had made sure to kill the brat back in the village, the red-eyed knight, Eugene would never have come to Rose Castle. Because of this failure, Verthel's plans have gone completely off the rails. The servant continues to apologize, but Vertel scoffs. He complains that the mercenary band he hired was usually reliable, yet they turned out to be worthless riffraff who got wiped out by a pack of wolves. He furiously asks the servant if his eyes are just for decoration, since he couldn't see the incompetence of the men he hired. Verthel's voice drops to a whisper. He decides that if the servant's eyes are useless, it doesn't matter if he gouges them out. Leaving the man to his fate, Vertel sighs and composes himself. He needs a new plan. He realizes he cannot openly kill someone who has already made his way inside the castle walls. Suddenly, an idea strikes him. A smile creeps across his face. He realizes there is a perfect way to handle this. This new method will handle the problem and make the disposal of the corpses nice and clean. The scene shifts to a quiet corridor where Felid and Eugene are talking. Eugene processes the orders he has just received. Sir Vertel is telling him to go to a dungeon that is about to be opened. Eugene looks at Felid and says he is pretty sure he knows what this means. Felid trembles, realizing that he came to the castle to die, and now he is being sent to a dungeon to fulfill that destiny. Eugene looks at the boy calmly. He asks if Felid remembers the commotion about the mercenaries who were attacked by wolves near the village. Eugene reveals the truth. Those third-rate mercenaries who became food for wolves were actually sent by one of Felid's brothers. They did not want Felid to reach the castle safely. Felid is horrified. Eugene offers him a lifeline. He states that there is a way for Felid to live. He tells the boy, "Become my servant, Felid Terwin." Eugene explains the logic. Felid is 16 years old, meaning he has already had his coming-of-age ceremony. Therefore, he does not need a guardian's consent to make decisions. Eugene tells him he is free to choose which path he takes. He can keep holding his breath and wait for someone to kill him, or he can struggle until the very end. The narrative jumps to the day of the dungeon opening. A commander is briefing the troops. He explains that since the dungeon hasn't been opened yet, no one knows what kind of monsters will appear. He speculates based on the size. Low-rank monsters will likely be goblins or kobolds, and mid-rank ones might be trolls or giant spiders. However, he warns that high-rank monsters are impossible to predict. The commander states their goal, to clear a path to the area where mid-rank monsters appear. He orders that if they encounter a high-rank monster, they must retreat immediately. The soldiers shout, "Yes, sir," in unison. The troops begin their mission. The order is given to scout the area for any dungeon burrows nearby. In the back of the group, a lazy soldier sighs with relief. He says it's a good thing he is just a porter because he won't have to bleed this time. He reveals his plan to his comrade. He intends to pretend he is hurt and stay back once they've roughly cleared the low ranks. His comrade is skeptical, asking if he can even do that. The soldier explains that first-time dungeon raids are brutal and they don't really take care of the rearguard. He argues that there is no reason to risk dying a dog's death just to pick up a few byproducts, especially since the pay is lousy. He suggests that in the worst case, they can just run off on their own. Suddenly, he bumps into someone. He yells, "Ugh, who's the idiot who dash?" but stops when he sees who it is. Is Sir Vertel. Vertel asks sharply if Felid is here. The soldier stammers in surprise. Vertel looks around, asking where the boy is, insisting he is sure he assigned him here. The soldier points nervously. He asks if Vertel is perhaps talking about that kid over there. In the distance, Felid is handing something to Eugene. Felid offers him a little something to eat on the way and tells him to please return safely. Eugene nods, accepting the food. Says, "All right." Vertel watches them with disgust. He sneers at how Felid slips in there like a little rat. He is repulsed seeing Felid sticking to that low-born, uncivilized wretch. Vertel shouts Felid. Felid jumps, startled. Vertel demands to know if he has already forgotten what he was told. He accuses Felid of dawdling and orders him to hurry up, shoulder his pack, and wait in his assigned position immediately. When Felid hesitates, Vertel gets aggressive. He calls him a brat and asks if he's gone deaf. Vertel grabs Felid, shouting that he clearly told him to return to his post right now. Suddenly, a hand grabs Vertel's arm. A voice commands him, "Don't lay a finger on him." Vertel looks up, shocked. It is Eugene. Eugene confronts the noble directly. He tells Vertel that what he is spouting is ridiculous. He questions the logic of sending a boy whose only experience with a blade is kitchen knives into a dungeon opening. He asks Vertel if he has lost his mind. Vertel is outraged by the insubordination. He calls Eugene disrespectful. He lies smoothly, claiming he only wishes to raise his little brother to be strong. He tells Eugene to know his place. He asserts that Eugene is in no position to be yanking that child around like a puppet. Eugene counters immediately. He says it seems to him that Vertel is the one who doesn't know his place. Eugene drops the bombshell. That child became my servant yesterday. Vertel is stunned into silence. Eugene adds that everybody present here can attest to that. Eugene explains the implications. He states that this means they share a bond thicker than blood. He issues a clear threat. If Vertel so much as lays a single finger on this child, Eugene will consider it a challenge to him. Eugene taunts Vertel, saying that if he wants to lightly loosen up his body right before they enter the dungeon, he should suit himself. Vertel is furious but backs down. He storms off, muttering about who gave permission for that. He complains about how easy they think it is to take in another family's bastard child. He believes this will block Felid's future. Meanwhile, the other soldiers are watching the scene. One comments that he feels reassured about this dungeon. He notes that they don't have knights in name only, but people of good skills leading them. He asks if the others saw Sir Eugene and Sir Galfredic's duel last week, calling it incredible. Another soldier laughs, wondering how long he will have to train to reach that level, and his friend jokes that he will need at least a second lifetime. Vertel curses them under his breath, those bastards. Kamara adds that he, too, would have no problem entrusting his brother to Sir Eugene. Vertel overhears this and seethes. Kamara turns back to Vertel. He repeats that Fel is 16 and an adult. He asks if Vertel doesn't think an adult should choose his own path. Eugene knows the hard lesson on survival. Felid is prey. Once the weak have become targets for a predator, surviving is not easy. Even if they hold their breath, the beast will chase them down. Eugene knows, if you can't become strong yourself, then form a pack. That is the way of survival of the weak. Kamara then lightens the mood slightly. He says that in the meantime, he will allow Felid to show him his studies. He asks if Felid is able to read. Suddenly, a scout reports in. He states that there are no traces of roamers nearby. This confirms there don't seem to be any monsters that have escaped through a dungeon burrow. Galfredic, as the commander, gives the final order. He announces that they may now proceed with the dungeon opening. The order echoes down the line. Open the dungeon. He reminds them that their lives are in their own hands. With a shout of advance, the troops march forward into the unknown. As the massive stone doors of the dungeon begin to open, light pours out. Kamara stands watching them leave. He waves, calling out, "We'll meet again in 4 days." Felid adds, "Sir Eugene, please be careful." With a prayer, may God watch over them. The dungeon is chaos. Screams fill the air as the formation crumbles under the assault of the monsters. Soldiers are being ripped apart. A man cries out for help, only to be silenced abruptly. Galfredic is in the thick of it, shouting orders. He screams at his men, calling them fucking idiots and demanding they stay in formation. He orders them to go back to their positions. He commands the archers in the center to defend the ceiling and warns everyone not to let the monsters enter their formation. In the back, the soldier who planned to slack off is regretting everything. He whimpers that he knew it would end up like this. He realizes volunteering for the dungeon opening subjugation was stupid to begin with. Panic takes over. The cowardly soldier decides he has to get out of there. He wonders if he should head back towards the entrance. Just as he turns to flee, a hand grabs him. It is Galfredic. He calls the soldier an idiot. He asks if the man really thought he wouldn't run into monsters if he just went back the way he came. Galfredic tells him to pull himself together. He explains that they are safest only when they stick together in this place. He orders the soldier to raise his sword and get back to his position. Galfredic is struggling. He curses internally, realizing that these mercenaries aren't in good shape because he gathered them in a hurry. He wonders how the hell he is supposed to subjugate this dungeon with such incompetent people. A subordinate shouts a warning. Sir Galfredic, there are more incoming. Another yells that monsters are pushing in from the rear. Galfredic realizes they are being surrounded. He decides they have to switch to a two-pronged formation. He announces he will take the rear. Suddenly, a figure dashes past him. Galfredic shouts, "Wait, Sir Eugene, going alone is dangerous." Eugene ignores him, charging straight into the darkness alone. Galfredic is a blur of motion. He shouts orders as he runs. "Partek, follow me. My rear." Partek, struggling to keep up, shouts, "Yes, sir." Galfredic is amazed by Eugene's speed, wondering how far he went in that brief moment. Eugene returns calmly. He reports that he killed all the ones coming from the crossroad. Then, he holds up a glowing plant he found. He asks nonchalantly if this is valuable, saying he found it in the corner. Partek stares at him in disbelief. He thinks to himself that Eugene doesn't even know what glowgrass is. Yet, despite this ignorance, he wonders how Eugene could be this strong. Eugene accidentally crushes the plant and says, "Oops, it withered." The battle winds down. The mercenaries are exhausted. One complains that he is about to die and calls for a medic because the bleeding is bad. Eugene returns to the main group. Few came to, tells that they collected the rest of the mana crystals. He drops a pile of them on the ground, telling them they can leave them there. Eugene notes that there are only a few, complaining that they killed so many yet this is all they get. He tells the men to rest well. Miriam appears, floating near the crystals. She points out that they are blue, which is different from the red one Eugene got from the roamer. She asks if it is a little disappointing because, compared to higher quality ones, they are quite small. She explains that the quality of a mana crystal is proportionate to the strength and size of the monster. Eugene asks if wild roamers usually have bigger crystals. Miriam clarifies that a monster becomes a roamer if it leaves the dungeon, but that doesn't guarantee an increase in crystal size. She reminds him of the alligator he absorbed. She says it was huge and strong, and such roamers are pretty rare. She emphasizes that it was even strong enough to usurp her own territory. Eugene realizes that obtaining that roamer's red mana crystal was very fortunate. He feels frustrated. He thinks that at this rate, doing favors for the nobles and coming into the dungeons is pointless. He wonders if there are even any high-level monsters in here. Suddenly, Eugene senses something. Galfredic sighs, saying, "Shoot, and I thought I was about to get some rest." He shouts to the men, "Break time's over. Back to your formation." Galfredic rallies the troops. He calls them weaklings. He orders that he and Sir Eugene will take the front, and the rest will follow behind. He threatens that anyone running away will be punished afterward. Eugene thinks to himself that this is his first time in a dungeon, and yet Galfredic wants him to stand at the front. Galfredic speaks to Eugene. He explains that the mercenaries aren't being helpful at all. He warns Eugene that the monsters they are about to face are going to be on a whole different level. Galfredic points ahead. He tells him to look. He explains that the monsters that have long held military power in the dungeon will probably be using the goblins as their soldiers. He concludes that, in other words, they are about to face at least some intermediate-level monsters. Galfredic continues his analysis. He says if they eliminate these, the high-level monsters will be waiting for them in the core of the dungeon, the depths. Eugene reflects on his power. He remembers that right after he consumed the red mana crystal of the roamer, he gained a very useful ability. He is curious. He wonders if he consumed another one like that, would he gain a different ability? His senses pick up the enemy. He reports that he hears at least 50 footsteps about 100 meters away. And ominously, there are 3 heavier ones in the back. Galfredic grins, saying, "Oh ho." Galfredic holds up a massive spear or javelin. He asks Eugene politely, "Would you like to throw this yourself?" Eugene launches the spear with massive force. The spear flies through the air, decimating the front line of the enemy. Galfredic screams, "Everyone charge!" The mercenaries rally behind him. They shout, "Yes, sir!" They scream to follow and support him. The battle begins in earnest as the 2 groups collide. Galfredic give ordermen to follow and support Eugene. A soldier tries to offer aid to Eugene. He shouts, "Sir Eugene, we will assist." But he is cut off by the sight before him. Eugene doesn't need assistance. He is tearing through the monsters with terrifying efficiency. Eugene moves through the battlefield like a storm. He slashes through enemies effortlessly. The narrator reflects on this moment. It states that on that day, the soldiers engraved the image of a knight they had long admired into their memory. The narration describes the soldiers' perception of Eugene. They saw noble swordsmanship. They saw unyielding nobility. They saw someone upright and just. They saw a figure who maintains his dignity even in battle. The visuals show Eugene cutting down monsters with brutal precision. The narration notes that all of these traits were unlike the knights they had known before. However, the final narration reveals the truth behind the admiration. It wasn't actually a noble style that they saw. It was a style far beyond their admiration. Eugene stands over the corpse of a massive monster, blood dripping from his hand. His eyes glow red in the darkness. It was the style of a bloody beast. The aftermath of the battle hangs heavy in the dungeon air. Soldiers slump against the cold stone walls, their chests heaving as they struggle to catch their breath. It isn't just physical tiredness that has gripped them. It is something deeper. The sheer brutality of the fight they just survived has drained their fighting spirit completely. Galfredic observes the troops, noting that physical fatigue couldn't have built up this quickly. He realizes that this is mental exhaustion, a paralysis caused by the horrific scene they just witnessed. The soldiers are shaken to their core, unable to take another step forward. Galfredic, the large knight, approaches Eugene. He assesses the situation and shakes his head. He tells Eugene that he doesn't think they can advance any more than this. He points out that they have already met the target they set for this expedition and suggests they withdraw now. Eugene, however, stands tall and unbothered. He replies simply that he is not tired yet. He explains his logic. They don't know when the next subjugation opportunity will be, so it feels like a waste to turn back now. He offers Galfredic a choice, saying that if he wants to go back, he is free to return first. Galfredic realizes he is stuck. He admits they don't have a choice and agrees to advance together. Eugene then issues a new command. He orders Galfredic to take the lead of the main subjugation party and head out of the dungeon. He declares that from here on, only he and his mercenaries will proceed deeper. The soldiers are shocked by this order. They begin to whisper among themselves, misunderstanding Eugene's intentions completely. One soldier sighs in relief, admitting he thought they were going to be dragged along. They speculate that Eugene noticed the soldiers' fatigue and chose to be considerate of them. They create a romanticized image of him in their minds, a man with a warm heart who cares for soldiers weaker than himself, hidden behind a sharp exterior. They look at his back with admiration, thinking he is a man who makes you reconsider what a knight truly is. Meanwhile, in the back, the soldier rabbin is panicked. He curses, complaining that he didn't want to go, yet he is getting swept up in this mission too. He admits internally that this situation is seriously scary as hell. Rabbin tries to calm himself down. He rationalizes that Sir Eugene can take down a troll by himself. He tells himself that if something happens, Eugene will handle it one way or another. Suddenly, Rabbin points into the darkness, shouting a spider. The narrator identifies the threat, a cave great spider. It is a spider-type monster that lives in groups and kills by melting and consuming its prey with a powerful acidic poison. Panic erupts immediately. Apartek screams that there are too many of them and suggests they fall back for now. Eugene remains calm. He scoffs, saying these numbers are nothing. He calls out to Rabbin, telling him they are joining the fight. When Rabbin hesitates, Eugene shouts that they are already fighting. He questions the very idea of falling back and charges forward into the swarm. The battle is chaotic and visceral. Eugene moves like a whirlwind, slicing through the arachnids. Green blood splatters across the cave walls. In the background, Rabin cries out in terror, begging for someone to save him. Eugene ignores the fear and continues his onslaught, his blade moving faster than a monster's can react. The skirmish ends as quickly as it began. Rabin stares at Eugene, breathless. He asks, "Sir Eugene?" He wonders internally if this man is really a monster himself. Recovering his composure, the mercenary praises him, saying that as expected, Sir Eugene is incredible. Feeling that they have pushed their luck enough, he suggests that since they have done plenty, perhaps they should turn back now. He turns to his leader, asking, "You think so too, right, Captain?" But the Captain Partek does not answer. He is frozen, staring into the darkness ahead. Partek stares into the darkness, trembling. He whispers to think, "We'd run into this here." He explains the gravity of the situation. Among roamers, even within the same species, there are different ranks. However, because higher ranks are almost never encountered, they aren't even considered when forming a subjugation party. But now, staring them in the face, is a creature of ridiculous size. The captain confirms there is no mistake. This is the higher rank variant of the cave great spider, a spider lord. The massive beast screeches, its many eyes glowing in the dark. Terror breaks the mercenaries' resolve completely. The captain screams for them to retreat. He shouts that they won't be of any help against a higher-ranked spider lord. He pleads that at the very least, they should come back with Sir Galfredic and the main force. Eugene ignores the plea. He calls out to Partek and Rabin by name. He orders the two of them to withdraw. He declares confidently, "This one's my prey." Partek stammers and understood. But internally, Partek feels something intense. He wonders what this feeling is. It is a strange sensation, as if he has lost control of his own body. Every nerve in him is screaming to get away from here. Miriam observes that the brats look like their instincts have surrendered to the difference in strength between them and Eugene. He asks the invisible spirit, Miriam, for confirmation. He asks her if that lord thing is a roamer on par with the master of the swamp he fought previously. Miriam corrects him. She states, "No, at that level, it is probably even stronger than the master of the swamp." Eugene smiles, his eyes glowing red. He reasons that in that case, its mana crystal should be even bigger. He looks up at the massive spider, not with fear, but with greed. He challenges the beast, telling it to struggle all it likes. He muses that the harder it is to open a treasure chest, the greater the excitement for what is inside. With his target locked, Eugene prepares to hunt the Lord of the Cave. The scene shifted into an aftermath of the battle with large Spider Lord. Eugene sits in the open air, the sun finally touching his skin without harming him. He is reflecting on his recent victory in the dungeon. The internal monologue of Eugene begins with the significant change that has taken place. The key to this change was the consumption of the mana crystal taken from the defeated dungeon lord. The second ability he gained by eating the mana crystal of that dungeon's lord is camouflage. He explains the mechanics of his transformation. By protecting his skin with the first ability he obtained, skin reinforcement, and using camouflage to reproduce human skin, he is now finally able to stand under the sunlight. He is relieved, noting that with this, the troublesome issue of having to avoid sunlight has been reduced. His thoughts are interrupted by a voice. A woman approaches him, surprised. She asks, "Sir Eugene, you're walking around without your mask now." She scolds him playfully, asking why he has been wearing that mask all this time just to hide such a beautiful face. Another woman declares that keeping his looks hidden is so cruel of him. More people gather around him, eager for gossip. One asks him to please tell them what happened during the dungeon opening. They heard the rumor that he defeated a cave great spider all by himself. The crowd fawns over him. Miriam laughs, saying he is getting sucked dry by the attention. Another person sighs, commenting on how beautiful he is. The speculation grows wilder. Someone asks him to share some of his heroic tales. Another asks directly if it could be that his lineage has the blood of an elf. Eugene sighs internally, thinking that it's almost as if things have gotten more troublesome instead. But the crowd convinces themselves. Galfredic exclaims, "That must be it." They say that now, it makes a bit more sense. They recall his abilities. His eyes were sharp even in a pitch-black dungeon, and his ears were keen like a wild dog's. They add his agile movements and the monstrous strength he displayed when he threw the spear. Based on all this, they figure he couldn't be an ordinary human. A large man, presumably Galfredic, laughs. He marvels at the idea that Eugene actually had elven blood running through his veins. However, he raises a valid point. He asks how Eugene managed to hide himself all this time, given that with his looks, it must have been harder not to stand out in this region. Eugene notes internally that the man is oddly sharp. Out loud, he replies nonchalantly that he has never really tried to hide himself on purpose. The man laughs again, pointing out that Eugene says that without changing his expression in the slightest. Eugene calls it seeing what you want to see. Eugene decides to use this misunderstanding to his advantage. He thinks that from now on, if he is ever suspected, he can probably just use the excuse that there's an elf among his ancestors. Later, alone again, Eugene delves deeper into the mystery of the crystal. He realizes that what he gained from eating that mana crystal this time wasn't simply an ability. He recalls that the moment the mark disappeared, memories he had never seen before played across his mind. He describes the vision. He saw himself, as he is now, lying in an unknown place. A soft hand was holding his. In that unfamiliar space where a bell was ringing out, everyone had their eyes on him. He wonders who the woman in those memories was. But then a more disturbing thought strikes him. He asks himself, no, before that, are those memories even mine? He reflects on his amnesia. As someone who has no recollection of his past, the only thing he remembers is the name Eugene. His thoughts are interrupted by a desperate cry. Sir Eugene! Rabin runs up to him, begging for help. Behind him, Galfredic is shouting. He calls Rabin an utterly hopeless brat. Galfredic reveals he heard everything, that Rabin went ahead and became nothing but dead weight for Sir Eugene. Rabin defends himself, arguing that that's only because Sir Eugene isn't human. He claims any normal person would have run away. Galfredic explodes. He asks if Rabin is saying Sir Eugene is a monster. He threatens to give the boy one hellish and intensive training. Eugene ignores their bickering and returns to his internal monologue. He repeats that the only thing he remembers is the name Eugene. But because of what happened this time, he has started to have a certain hunch. He theorizes that if he erases these marks one by one, just like now, he might be able to find out more about himself. In the background, Galfredic is chasing Partek, who are screaming for his lives. Eugene ignores the chaos. He thinks to himself that he doesn't want to find out some falsehood like being a knight or having elven blood. He wants to know who he truly was. The scene shifts to the formal introduction with Lord Terwin. The Lord, looking frail in his bed, speaks to them. He says he heard they have successfully completed the subjugation of the dungeon opening. Eugene and Galfredic kneel. Galfredic introduces himself as Krema, third son of Galfredic. Eugene introduces himself as Jan, eldest son of Eugene. Lord Terwin acknowledges their hardship. He orders a servant to hand it to him. The servant presents a document to Eugene. Lord Terwin explains that he heard Eugene needed a certificate to guarantee his status. He says humbly that he doesn't know how much help it will be, but this should perfectly guarantee Eugene's identity as Jan of House Eugene. Eugene accepts it, saying he is most grateful. Outside, Miriam is celebrating wildly, shouting Kaya. Finally, inside, Lord Terwin begins to cough violently. Kamara rushes to his side, calling out, "Father." The Lord speaks his final worries. He tells Kamara that his younger brother's ambitions weigh heavily on his mind, so he cannot close his eyes in peace. Kamara reassures him, telling him not to worry about Vertel. He vows to guide the domain his father built safely and properly. Lord Terwin gives his final lesson. He tells his beloved firstborn son that a domain is nothing but dust and earth. He commands Kamara to remember that a lord must always look after his people, not his land, and lead them well. The scene transitions to a funeral. Eugene reflects that whatever kind of Lord Terwin was, there are quite a lot who grieve his death. However, even in front of the same person's passing, there are some who do not share the same sentiment. The image shows Vertel looking unmoved. After the funeral, Galfredic prepares to leave. He apologizes to Kamara for having to leave in the midst of the Lord's funeral. Kamara is understanding, saying it is all right and that he understands Galfredic has his own schedule. Kamara turns to Eugene and asks if he is really going to stay here. Eugene confirms it. He says he intends to go into the dungeon one more time. He reasons that it would be a waste to leave it after they went through the trouble of opening it. Galfredic expresses regret. He calls a shame. He says that if the Count of Evergrow heard of Eugene, he would have liked him very much. He tells Eugene it was an honor to cross swords with a strong knight like him. He hopes that next time, They won't meet as enemies. Rabin bids Sir Galfredic farewell, telling him to look after himself. Eugene orders Partek to prepare for departure. Felid is confused. He asks Partek, didn't he just say he was going to stay here? Partek points out that Sir Galfredic left on horseback. Felid repeats, a horse. Eugene explains that as a rule, knights ride horses. He reveals their next destination. They're going to the trading company. The goal is twofold: to get a horse for Sir Eugene and to sell the monster's byproducts. Felid is enthusiastic. He declares that as Sir Eugene's retainer, he will also do his utmost to assist him. Eugene stops him, asking assist. Eugene tells Felid coldly that he won't be needing his assistance for the time being. Felid is shocked, asking what he means by that. The scene shifts to a bustling city. A rough voice shouts, "Hey, get that over there quickly." Another yells at someone, asking if they're even working properly. Felid is seen carrying heavy boxes, realizing his assistance means hard labor in the city while Eugene handles his business. The location is revealed: the kingdom of Kaler, greatest commerce city, Marin. In the bustling port city of Marin, gossip spreads like wildfire. A crowd gathers, whispering and staring at a large haul of goods. A man asks incredulously if these are all dungeon byproducts brought in by a single knight. Rabin confirms it loudly, puffing out his chest. He declares that all of these were brought in by Sir Jan Eugene. The name sparks recognition. People gasp, asking if it is that Jan Eugene. They recall the recent dungeon opening subjugation in the Terwin territory. The rumor mill churns out a wild story. He is the up-and-coming knight who supposedly ripped off a troll's head while it was still alive. Rabin's rough voice interrupts the awe. A merchant shouts at someone to keep their hands off the goods. Felid turns back to Eugene, wiping sweat from his brow. He comments that Eugene's talk is taking quite some time. In the room, Merchant reassures Eugene not to worry. He introduces himself grandly as Billmore of the Palin Trading Company, the pride of Marin. He promises to personally take responsibility for handling Eugene's byproducts. Eugene observes him coolly. He admits to himself that he was half-doubting when Partek said he knew a good trading company. Billmore continues to blabber about his company being a major company and goes on and on. Eugene tunes him out but acknowledges the reality. He thinks to himself that it is impressive Partek introduced him to such a large-scale company. He decides this will be very useful for someone like him who is ignorant of human social networks. Billmore promises to buy the byproducts at the best possible base price using their know-how. He starts to offer a guarantee if Eugene signs an exclusive contract. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupts them, demanding to know which of them is Sir Eugene. Partek freezes. He whispers to Eugene that this could get a bit awkward. He points to the newcomer. Eugene asks why. Partek explains that the man is a secretary working directly under the deputy manager of the Palin Trading Company. Eugene asks what of it and demands a simpler explanation. Partek clarifies. That means he is someone with more power than Billmore himself. He warns Eugene that the man has likely come to snatch the byproducts at a lower price. He advises Eugene that if he wants a stable trade partner, it would be best to proceed very carefully right now. Eugene repeats the word carefully, thoughtfully. Billmore tries to intervene, stammering a greeting to Sir Grail. He claims he is already in negotiations with Sir Eugene for an exclusive contract. Grail shoves Billmore aside aggressively. He tells Billmore to step aside and not pointlessly challenge someone he can't possibly beat. He points out that he doesn't see any signed contract papers anywhere. Grail turns his attention to Eugene. He remarks that there is quite a bit of talk about Eugene all over the harbor. He repeats the rumor about the knight who ripped off a troll's head with his bare hands and brought in a mountain of byproducts. Grail sneers, dismissing the rumors. He says it is probably nothing more than an unverified rumor spread to inflate the value of the goods. He calls it a transparent little newbie's tactic. He gets to business. He announces that the deputy manager would like to sign a contract with Eugene personally. He orders Eugene to be done with this shabby place and come with him. Internally, Grail is plotting. He thinks of Eugene as a brat of a knight who only knows brute strength. He plans to haul him off and strip him down to the bone. Suddenly, he feels an intense pressure. He stammers, wondering what this pressure is. Grail quickly changes his tone, apologizing for his rudeness. He introduces himself properly as Grail, secretary to the deputy manager. He claims this will certainly be a good opportunity for Eugene. Eugene asks calmly, "An opportunity? What kind of opportunity?" Grail replies that it is a chance to sell the byproducts under better terms. Eugene repeats, better terms? Grail eagerly confirms, saying the deputy manager would personally handle it. Eugene interrupts him sharply. The deputy manager would personally? Grail panics, thinking he offended Eugene. He stammers an apology, claiming he never meant to be discourteous. Eugene stares at him. Grail breaks down, apologizing again and promising to come see him another day before fleeing. Billmore is overjoyed. He cries out, "Sir Eugene," and claims he is moved to tears. Eugene looks confused, having no idea what he did. Billmore marvels that Eugene rejected a contract with the deputy manager on his account. He pledges his full and unwavering support from now on. He tells Eugene to just say the word if he ever needs anything. Eugene smiles slightly. He says he likes the sound of that. Billmore asks when they will begin the proceedings. Eugene is confused. Eugene orders him to start right now and get out. The scene shifts to the Palin Trading Company office. The deputy manager receives the report. She repeats, "You say the offer was rejected." Grail bows his head, saying he has no excuse and confirming that Eugene is no ordinary man. The deputy manager tells him it is fine. She explains that knights often make things difficult for merchants for the sake of their honor or pride. She says that in that case, they simply have to make things difficult for them in their own way. She notes that for merchants like them, whose power lies in money and goods, that isn't hard. She adds that it is especially easy when the opponent is a poor knight who doesn't even have a proper horse. She orders Grail to go and deliver a gift to Sir Eugene. She describes it as a gift far too good for a penniless knight to refuse. Meanwhile, Eugene is giving orders to Felid. He tells Felid to stay there and keep selling the byproducts. Felid is shocked. He asks why he has to stay behind this time too. He asks if it is because his skills are still too lacking to follow Eugene. He declares that if that is the case, he will start training with the sword this instant. Eugene stops him. He asks Felid what a retainer's role is. Felid answers correctly. It is to support the knight they serve in both battle and daily life. Eugene nods. He tells Felid that what he has to do is support his daily life as his retainer. He assigns Felid a mission to sell the byproducts Eugene brings back from battle and accumulate money. He tells Felid to work out the details while living and working with Billmore. He assures Felid that Billmore will teach him plenty about business. Felid accepts this. He thinks to himself that if not for Sir Eugene, he would have died a long time ago. So throwing a tantrum would be disgraceful. Eugene promises that once they have saved up some funds, he will consider teaching Felid the sword. Eugene says that someday, Felid will have to support his battles as a retainer too. Felid salutes, promising to follow orders. Later, Eugene stands with Partek at a shop. He sighs, noting that money really disappears fast. He comments that even though they only bought the minimum essentials, there is nothing left. Miriam sniffles dramatically. She complains that their purse is so thin that even his heart feels hollow. She asks if they can get this back to normal quickly. Eugene is distracted by something in a shop window. Partek says, "Oh, this is plate armor." He calls it a true dream for every knight. Eugene asks if that means it is expensive. Partek explains that it isn't just expensive. Even wealthy knights often pass this kind of armor down through generations because of its value. Suddenly, Rabin runs up to them. He shouts, "Sir Eugene, Captain!" A huge roamer horde has appeared just outside Marin. Rabin gasps for breath. He reports that roamers from the forest east of Marin are trying to push into the city. He says the local Marin guilds are barely holding them back right now. Partek suggests they participate in the subjugation. Eugene asks why he should. Rabin explains eagerly. Unlike dungeons that have an owner, there are no commission fees for roamer hunts. He points out that this is Marin, the merchant city overflowing with capital. It is the perfect location to sell monster byproducts and loot at high prices with no transport costs. He shouts that in other words, it means a huge pile of money. Eugene is sold. Rabin says, "That's what this is about. Let's go." Eugene agrees. There is no reason to hesitate. A voice shouts, "Wait." It is Grail. He is out of breath. He announces that the deputy manager sent a war horse as a gift, and he is there to deliver it. He presents the horse, describing its glossy black mane and muscles that look sculpted by a god. He calls it a thoroughbred among thoroughbreds. Eugene asks suspiciously if the deputy manager is giving him this. Grail gets nervous again under Eugene's gaze. He stammers that it isn't because she wants anything from him. Grail claims it is just a small token of appreciation. Eugene accepts it without a second thought. He mounts the horse immediately. He tells Grail to tell her he is grateful. Then he shouts, "Let's go rake in some money." He gallops off. Rabin watches him go, stunned. He asks what they should do since Eugene is already gone. A subordinate points out that the horse is really fast. Partek yells at him, asking what he means. "What do we do?" Partek screams, "Run after him, you idiot!" The mercenaries are running, trying to catch up. The scene shifts to the eastern outer forest of Marin City. They spot the enemy. Miriam shouts, "Eugene!" She observes that if they can already see the roamers from here, then this really is on a huge scale. She grimly notes that most of the Marin Guild members holding the line up ahead might already be dead. Eugene, riding ahead, replies coldly. "That's good news," he says. He explains his reasoning. "I don't like sharing loot, after all." In the eastern forest outside Marin City, the air is thick with the sounds of battle. A massive horde of monsters is charging toward the city. The ground shakes with their footsteps. A lone knight, battered and pushed to his limits, stands as the last line of defense. The Knight of Justice, Madrika, shouts at the top of his lungs, "You scoundrels!" He plants his feet firmly, declaring with desperate resolve, "You shall not move forward unless you kill me." The monsters roar back, unified, as they surge forward. Madrika struggles against the overwhelming force. He grunts in pain, invoking his title and duty. "Ugh, in the name of Marin, I, the Knight of Justice, Madrika." His heroic declaration is cut short. He stammers, "Huh," in confusion. Suddenly, a terrifying sound pierces through the battlefield. Madrika's eyes widen in shock. He screams, "Help!" His bravery crumbling into panic as he witnesses something unbelievable. The monsters in front of him are being decimated by an unseen force. The dust settles, revealing the savior. Madrika stands amidst the carnage, trembling but alive. He looks up at the figure who saved him. He says humbly, "Ho, I owe you a great debt." He asks respectfully, "What is your name, sir?" The savior, Eugene, glances back. He replies coolly, "My name? Is that important right now?" He points out the stark reality. "It would have been pointless had you died here." Madrika admits, "You have a point." He vows that when they return from this hell on earth, he shall ask for Eugene's name once more. Back in the safety of Marin, Madrika recounts the tale to an eager crowd. He describes the scene dramatically. Hundreds of goblins rushed over to this great city of merchants, Marin, like a swarm of ants. He boasts that they fought until the very end. Then, he introduces the hero of the story. And in that moment of crisis, that knight slayed the goblins without mercy. He quickly adds, "Of course, I did too," ensuring he gets some credit. He concludes triumphantly that in the end, they were able to secure victory and protect Marin. The crowd is impatient. They shout, "We get it. So who was that knight?" Madrika smiles knowingly and asks if they are curious. He reveals the name. His name is Jan Eugene. The name sparks immediate recognition. A citizen asks, "Jan Eugene? Isn't he the same knight who subjugated the dungeon in the Terwin territory?" Another shares a wild rumor. "From what I heard, he pulled out the spine of a live troll." The crowd is awestruck that such an honorable knight protected their city. They begin to cheer. "Sir Jan Eugene is our hero," someone shouts. The chant spreads, "Jan Eugene, Jan Eugene." One man notes that the entire city is chanting the name of that knight. The scene shifts to a luxurious office. An older man, Louis Palin, the current mayor of Marin and ex-representative of the Palin Trading Company, is speaking with his granddaughter, Pricella. Louis asks if she is sure they should leave Eugene be. Pricella replies confidently, "Of course. Everything will be under control." She reveals her strategy. She is actually hoping Sir Eugene becomes even more reputable. She explains her reasoning coldly. After all, the higher he soars, the worse the fear of the fall gets. Pricella asks her grandfather if he knows about the squire Jan Eugene has with him, the child who has been supplying the byproducts to the trading company. Louis confirms he knows. Pricella reveals a secret she uncovered. "For what I've investigated, the child is a hidden, illegitimate child of the Terwin family." Louis realizes the implication immediately. "I see. That means..." Pricella elaborates. Although they don't know exactly what Sir Eugene is thinking, he's clearly trying to secure a huge fund through business and sponsor the illegitimate child. She concludes that if they can secure them, they might be able to build a relationship with the future head of the Terwin family. Lewis laughs, impressed by his granddaughter. He says he sees what she is planning. He summarizes, she intends to buy off a knight who is sponsoring an illegitimate child. He decides to play his part. He declares that he will also have to send Sir Eugene a gift. He justifies it as the right thing for the mayor of Marin to do for a hero who solved their problem. Lewis tells Preachella he will put her in as a referral and tells her to make good use of this opportunity. Preachella thanks him. Preachella walks down a corridor, her internal monologue revealing her philosophy. She thinks, those who are thirsty will seek the water's edge to drink. She states that as a merchant, there is only one thing she has to do. She vows to dig a well before the right person's thirsty. She plans to wait until Eugene restlessly drinks the water that she dug out. Eugene enters a room where Preachella is waiting. She thinks to herself that he will drink without resistance or doubt. Out loud, she welcomes him warmly. Welcome, Marin's hero, Sir Jan Eugene. Eugene states he is there to give his thanks. He confirms her identity as Preachella, the Marin branch owner. She confirms it and invites him to take a seat. She observes him closely. She notes internally that he is a beautiful individual, yet also a terrifying knight capable of decapitating a troll with his bare hands. She concludes that he is different from the knights she has met so far. Preachella comments that the armor the mayor gifted him suits him well. She explains its value. It is a commission from the best workshop in Marin, made from special steel forged by mixing Elsic iron with ogre bones, giving it a hardness even a dragon's fangs cannot easily pierce. She asks how it feels. Eugene replies, thoughtfully. He says he thinks he can count on its sturdiness in the next dungeon subjugation. He expresses his gratitude for the great lodging and food she provided. He notes that his mercenaries are in good condition now as a result, and he anticipates great results from them. He adds a disclaimer. Although he did not do what he did expecting to receive these rewards, he still expresses his gratitude for her goodwill. Preachella laughs softly. She seizes the moment. In that case, would you like to listen to my proposal? Eugene interrupts her abruptly. Now then, since I'm a busy person, I'll take my leave. He stands up to go. Preachella is shocked. She stammers, what? Leaving so soon? Eugene explains that once the dungeon in Terwin is subjugated, he will stop by once more. He adds casually, oh, on second thought, I can do that much. He clarifies his position. He states that his contract is only limited to the byproducts from the dungeon this time, so this might just be farewell. He reveals his next plan. I'm going to focus on collecting mana crystals this time. So he says goodbye. Preachella's composure cracks. She shouts, wait. She tries to stop him, asking goodbye. Don't we have more things to talk about? Eugene looks back, confused. What could you possibly mean? Preachella drops the polite facade. She says sternly, Sir Eugene, I can't let you play dumb now. There's a limit to that. She lists the debts he has incurred. They gifted him the most expensive full-plate armor in Marin and a warhorse with a pedigree, not to mention providing him with their highest quality hotel and dishes. She points out the hard numbers. The byproducts you sold to the company isn't even enough to pay for half the services we have given you. Are you really going to pretend that you don't know that? She turns to threats. She asks if he didn't learn that everything in this world comes with a cost when he was a squire. She warns him, asking if he does not care if the people of Marin, who are praising him, find out the truth. She accuses him directly. You're a shameless knight who knows no honor, Sir Eugene, dear hero of Marin. Preachella, the deputy manager, stands with a cold fury. She accuses Eugene of hypocrisy, asking if he plans to simply walk away after taking everything she offered. Care to argue your case, Sir Jan Eugene? She demands, her voice sharp with indignation. Eugene, standing at the door, turns back slowly. His expression is one of calm disdain. Ridiculous, he scoffs. He lists her actions with brutal clarity. She ordered him around on their first meeting, dumped unwanted gifts on him without his consent, and now dares to demand payment for those very gifts. He steps closer, his gaze hardening. Is a mere merchant trying to threaten me? He asks, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Preachella flinches, momentarily stunned by his audacity. Eugene continues. He clarifies that he is under no obligation to her directly. You seem to be under a misunderstanding. So let me be clear, he states. He reveals that he has already made a contract with the Palin Trading Company, specifically through Billmore, not her. He asserts that as long as she quietly continues to buy his goods, he couldn't care less what the people of Marin say about him. Then, he turns her own words against her. But as you said, everything has a price, he acknowledges. He challenges her to go ahead and spread rumors, to run her mouth all she likes. He leans in, his eyes glowing with an unsettling intensity. Then you'll find out for yourself what that price really means, deputy manager. He delivers his final verdict on the situation. From his perspective, it looks like Palin is colluding with the city to persecute the very knight who saved them. He warns her of the consequences. If this is how Marin treats its heroes, then when the next crisis comes, there won't be a single knight willing to step forward for Marin. With that heavy threat hanging in the air, he turns to leave, declaring, "I've said what I came to say." Partek adds a final remark. "Forgive my bluntness, but this is truly unfortunate." As Eugene walks away, Partek leaves her with a lingering thought. "Had your approach been different, we could certainly have built a good relationship." These words strike a nerve. Pricella's facade cracks. She realizes she has miscalculated. Her retainer stammers, but she cuts him off. "Please wait," she calls out, her voice losing its edge. Eugene stops. Pricella composes herself and bows her head deeply. "I have been discourteous," she admits. She introduces herself properly this time, not as a superior, but as a negotiator offering an apology. She confesses that her desire to gain the upper hand clouded her judgment. She offers a truce. "To atone for my rudeness, I'd like us to start over this relationship from the beginning," she proposes. She suggests keeping his existing contract with Billmore, but adding new clauses to the agreement, promising there will be nothing for him to worry about. Internally, Pricella's mind races. She reflects on her experience with knights. Most are fools who wag their tails at the first sign of wealth. But this man, Jan Eugene, is different. He is dangerous. She realizes she cannot toy with him. Her merchant's instinct screams that she must not let him go. Eugene turns back, his interest piqued but his guard still up. "I'll at least hear you out," he concedes coolly. However, this better be a very tempting offer. Pricella smiles, relieved but calculating. She thanks him for his mercy. The scene shifts to a brighter, more triumphant moment. Eugene riding horse, fully armored in the magnificent plate mail gifted by the mayor. Miriam admires the suit, noting that while it is just decoration, it looks undeniably cool. She says to him, "That armor and a horse are what truly make a knight look the part." She strikes a pose, thinking, "Watch out, world." Eugene is the coolest in the whole world. Partek, now walking beside him, compliments his contract. He notes that he has secured a quite favorable deal. Eugene asks if he thinks so too. He explains the scale of the Palin Trading Company, noting that its influence is too large to ignore, with hundreds of branches across the Roman Empire. He elaborates on the company's reach, mentioning their vigorous trade with noble houses like Terwin, Brantia, Evergrow, and Heartless. For such a powerful entity to offer unlimited mediation for dungeons or labyrinths connected to each branch is an incredibly generous proposal. He suggests that this deal might be even better than receiving an official appointment from a noble house. He praises his negotiation skills, calling it a brilliant push and pull. Eugene brushes off the compliment, reverting to his blunt honesty. Eugene admits he only said those things because he was annoyed. One old man adds a self-deprecating remark. "Just because someone is wrapped in shiny armor, does that automatically make him a knight? You've got such a pretty face. Who knows if you can even hold a sword properly?" Miriam furiously says, "Oh my, what did that rotten potato face guy just say?" Kamara Terwin approaches, smiling. He greets Eugene, saying he's right on time. Eugene corrects himself, asking if he should address him as Lord Terwin now. Kamara waves it off, telling Eugene to address him however he pleases. He notes that Eugene has changed quite a bit in a short time. Eugene gets straight to business, asking about the situation. Kamara sighs. He explains that instead of being humbled, his younger brother, Vert Hell, has gone and hired new mercenaries again. But this time, Kamara feels something is off. He asks Eugene if he remembers the previous mercenary band that was wiped out by wolves. He recalls them being a nasty bunch. Kamara confides that the new mercenaries give off a similarly dangerous vibe. Because of this suspicion, he makes a request. He wants Sir Eugene to serve as the commander of this dungeon subjugation party. The old Baldy is taken aback. "Come now, Lord Terwin," he protests. He asks bluntly, "If that fellow dies in the dungeon, Does that mean I become commander then? Kamara is shocked by the directness of the question. The old man shrugs, admitting it's not something he wants to say either, but facts are facts. It's not like we're all going on a picnic, he remarks grimly. He reminds Kamara that in a dungeon, human life becomes as cheap as a fly's, so they must prepare for the worst. The old man with a dark logic. I'll be counting on you then, Commander, he says. Eugene sneers at the arrangement. Not a bad idea. If I die, we'll let Baldy over there play commander in my place. Eugene announces that they have countermeasures in place and will charge forward at once. Miriam curses that bastard. Eugene analyzes the situation. He knows this is one of Erthel's tricks. He deduces that Vertel is planning to use the mercenaries to get rid of him inside the dungeon. A dark smile touches Eugene's lips. But watching things not go the way he wants them to might be rather fun, he thinks. The scene jumps to the inside of the dungeon. The battle is raging. The mercenaries watch in awe as Eugene fights. Old man comments that his reputation wasn't just empty bragging. Eugene stands at the very front, a whirlwind of destruction, taking on 100 men's worth of work all by himself. The mercenaries realize they are barely doing anything. Eugene is like a massive shield protecting them. However, in the shadows, that old man watches. He curses, waiting for a good opening. Just one chance, he thinks, gripping a poison-coated sword. He is desperate to land, even to graze on Eugene's infuriating face. Eugene calls out to the group. Up ahead is the area where only mid-rank monsters appear, he warns. He tells them that from here on, he can no longer guarantee their lives. Only those who wish to may follow, he declares. Eugene's warning hangs in the air. He repeats it for emphasis. Only those confident they can keep up are to follow. The soldiers whisper among themselves. Old man argues that if the commander is going, they have to go too. Another sees it as an opportunity. They decide to follow. But Partek stops them. Wait, he orders. We'll stay here and wait for a bit. He explains that Eugene has a different idea in mind. Eugene recalls the last time he came here. He was with Sir Galfredic. Eugene reflects on Galfredic's absence. It really is a lot less entertaining without him, he muses. He admits that Galfredic was an excellent leader who raised morale and took the most dangerous positions at the front. Eugene speculates that with Galfredic, they might have cleared the dungeon safely even with this rabble. He becomes curious. If Galfredic were here, how would he handle this situation, he wonders. Eugene turns his attention to the traitors in the group. So you've finally decided to drop the half-hearted act, he says calmly. Good. If you're that eager to die, I'll oblige you. Suddenly, chaos erupts. Wait, what is that? Someone screams. A water ball explodes in their midst. The mercenaries panic. Damn it, that bastard can use magic too? They yell. The dark blinds them. We can't see anything up front, cries one. Another orders them to relight the torches. Confusion reigns as they shove each other in the dark. We're under attack, someone screams. They start swinging their weapons blindly. The panic turns to friendly fire. Wait, this side is our allies, though. A mercenary shouts, just before screaming in pain as his leg is struck. The old man realizes his plan has backfired. Damn it, I didn't expect this, he thinks. He realizes that with no light, the situation has actually made it easier for Eugene to rampage alone. The mercenaries scream for light. Just light up. Light up already, damn it. But then, a sudden, heavy silence falls over the group. The screaming stops. Why? Why is it so quiet? Old man whispers, trembling. From the darkness, a voice speaks, calm and terrifying. Do you need fire? A flame ignites, illuminating Eugene's face. Gasp, he mocks. If you're having trouble breathing, allow me to help. He steps forward, the firelight casting long, menacing shadows. Human eyes are terribly inconvenient in the dark, aren't they? He asks. He holds the flame higher. So how about now? Can you see more clearly? He poses a chilling question to the terrified traitor. Do you see who is hunting, and who is being hunted? The old man stares up at Eugene, whose eyes glow red in the gloom. He realizes the horrifying truth. Shit, he whispers. You damn monster. In the tense courtyard of Rose Castle, Kamara's voice calls out desperately, Sir Eugene. His voice, filled with disbelief, asks if the shocking news is true. Vertel Terwin arrives at the scene, demanding to know what the commotion is about. Eugene calmly replies that they can just hear it directly from the person involved. He gestures to a man kneeling on the ground, battered and defeated. It is Sir Maverick. Maverick confesses his crime. He admits he tried to kill Jan Eugene on Vertel Terwin's orders. Vertel, standing nearby, explodes in anger. He stammers that Maverick is always spouting nonsense and has finally lost it. Kamara confronts his younger brother, asking just how far he is planning to go. Vertel turns the accusation back on Kamara. He tells Kamara to come to his senses and asks if he is really going to believe the words of someone who has clearly lost his mind. Vertel then addresses Maverick directly, his tone threatening. He asks, "Isn't that so, Sir Maverick?" He demands Maverick stop babbling nonsense and explain things properly. Under Eugene's intense glare, Maverick breaks. He starts to stammer, asking himself what he tried to do and what exactly he has done. He wails in despair, asking how he could dare raise his hand against his lord. He declares that trash like him deserves to die. Vertel is shocked. He shouts, "Wait, what are you?" But it is too late. Maverick run towards the window and jumped through the window and died by the hands of standing statue. Kamara cries out his name as the man jump. Vertel seizes the moment. He points to the dead body and tells Kamara, "See." He claims Maverick clearly went mad after seeing a man getting torn apart by a monster and asks if it isn't stranger to believe his ravings. Kamara counters coldly. He says what he finds stranger is that Vertel is relieved someone died. Vertel snaps back, accusing Eugene of being no different. He asks if Eugene has no pride as a knight. He accuses Eugene of slandering him with absurd, paranoid delusions. Eugene cuts through the noise. He asks directly, "Vertel, on your honor as a knight, are you truly innocent?" Vertel replies without hesitation, "Of course." Eugene smiles grimly. "If that's the case, Vertel Terwin," he says, "I hereby demand a trial by combat against you." He declares he is staking both their knightly honors upon the truth. The challenge is issued. Word spreads quickly through the castle. Servants whisper that the second young master is holding a trial by combat in the front yard. One asks what he has done this time. Another reveals the rumor. He ordered an assassination. The servants are shocked. A servant sighs, commenting that Vertel always causes trouble, but this time he's gone too far. Another asks who the target was. The answer is Sir Jan Eugene, the person the Lord hired recently. Since their claims sharply conflict, they intend to let a duel decide the truth. The servant recites the belief. The truth shall be granted to the victor in accordance with God's righteous will. The duel begins. Eugene and Vertel clash. The servant prays, "May guidance be given to the winner." In middle of battle, Eugene's mind flashbacks of Vertel's past appear. He remembers finding the vampire and ordering his men to inform Sir Jungdert. He recalls thinking it was absurd that he was chased by a mere wretch like this for over a decade. Back in the present, Vertel is losing. He is shocked by Eugene's strength. Eugene strikes him hard, sending him crashing to the ground. Eugene stands over him. He orders Vertel to pick up his sword. Vertel struggles to rise, grunting in pain. Kamara watches from the sidelines. He analyzes the fight. He admits that Vertel's swordsmanship was by no means poor. However, this time, even someone ignorant of the sword could see the truth. He concludes that Jan Eugene is overwhelmingly stronger than Vertel. Kamara shouts, "That's enough?" Kamara, panting and desperate, questions the order. Kamara tells Eugene to step aside. Eugene refuses, stating the duel is not yet over. Kamara declares he cannot simply stand by and watch his brother die by Eugene's hand. He states that Vertel is no longer capable of fighting and thus cannot prove his claim. He announces the verdict. Therefore, the victor is Sir Jan Eugene. Vertel screams in denial. "No, I can still fight." He vows to personally wring that bastard's neck. Kamara shouts his name to stop him. Kamara orders him to stop now. He states the match is already decided. He tells Vertel that as a knight, he should acknowledge his crimes and repent for them in prison. Vertel snaps. He screams for Kamara to shut up. He wails, asking what he even did wrong. He turns his rage on Eugene. "Jan Eugene, if it weren't for you." He cries that if only Eugene had never appeared in his life, he would never have had to suffer this humiliation. Vertel charges at Eugene again in a blind rage. Eugene effortlessly cuts him. Vertel collapses. Suddenly, Vertel freezes. Vertel wonders why his body won't move. He notices something strange. "Huh, this is my armor." He whispers his brother's name, Kamara, but Vertel's head lies on ground. Eugene looks at him with pity and finality. He tells him, You should have grasped the last chance your brother gave you. Vertel Terwin. The gathered crowd looks her grim. Eugene walks away, leaving the defeated man in the dust. Kamara stands in the aftermath of chaos. He whispers to himself, "My foolish younger brother." Later, scenes shift in the calmer city of Marin. Eugene and Miriam discuss the event. Miriam asks if it isn't a pity. Eugene asks what she means. Miriam points out that Maverick was the first familiar Eugene ever made. She notes that he ended up using him only to force a confession before tossing him aside cleanly. Eugene replies, "Not really." He explains that Maverick had such a weak mind, he couldn't even properly endure becoming a familiar. He reasons that if he had left him as he was, it would have been easy for others to notice he had become a vampire. He concludes that using him as expendable bait to force a trial by duel was the most appropriate use for him. He adds coldly, asking if she really thinks he would let someone live after he bared his fangs at him. Miriam calls him heartless, as expected of a vampire. But she argues that a vampire should command countless slaves, calling them the symbol of power. Eugene walks away, saying no need. Miriam complains that he doesn't understand style at all. Eugene reflects on the idea of familiars. He thinks that if he turns weaklings into familiars, cleaning up after them causes more trouble than they're worth. He muses that if he ever finds someone he actually likes. Suddenly, he hears shocking news. Preachella shouts, "What? Sir Galfredic?" Billmore confirms the news, saying things are in chaos right now. Preachella asks when Galfredic even went in. He notes it has been 2 weeks already. Later, Billmore greets Eugene. "Oh dear, Sir Eugene, welcome." He mentions hearing that the dungeon subjugation was completed successfully. Eugene cuts to the chase, asking what happened to Sir Galfredic. Preachella explains the report that 2 weeks ago, Sir Galfredic took part in the labyrinth subjugation in Count Evergrow's domain. They were told he went missing alone inside that labyrinth. Eugene takes his horse to find Galfredic. The report continues. The search team thoroughly searched the entire mid-rank monster area, but didn't find a single personal belonging of his. The report concludes that it is likely he has been unable to return from the high-rank monster area. The scene opens with a warm welcome inside the Grand Hall of House Evergrow. Jevin Evergrow, the eldest son, greets Eugene with a smile. He says he has heard much about him and compliments Eugene for being far younger and more handsome than the rumor suggested. Eugene humbly thanks him, saying it is an honor to meet Lord Jevin. However, Jevin quickly shifts the tone. He states that the situation is urgent and suggests they talk further inside. Once in a private room, Jevin reveals the grim truth. He explains that Sir Galfredic let his ambitions get the better of him. He says they were planning to grant Galfredic an appointment if he succeeded in the raid, but they didn't expect him to enter the upper levels on his own initiative. Eugene confirms the detail, asking if Galfredic acted on his own. Jevin affirms it. He explains that unfortunately, the upper levels Galfredic entered are an area House Evergrow has been unable to touch for over 100 years. He reveals that this place is where the so-called Master of the Labyrinth resides. Eugene asks about the Master. Another man beside Eugene clarifies that it is a being that rules over the entire labyrinth, not just lives there. He laments that Galfredic, blinded by the prospect of achievements, pressed forward too recklessly and caused trouble for many. Jevin then introduces another man in the room. This is Sir Lugates, the house's territorial knight. Jevin explains that Lugates was the one who led the subjugation party together with Sir Galfredic. Lugates greets Eugene, mentioning the rumor that Eugene defeated Galfredic in a duel. Lugates shares an amusing fact. He is the Evergrow tournament champion, meaning he beat Galfredic in the tournament. He points out that they share something in common. They have both defeated Sir Galfredic. Eugene coldly cuts him off, asking if that is important right now. Jevin explains it only shows that Galfredic is a talent too valuable to lose. He apologizes on behalf of Evergrow for the situation. Jevin asks Eugene if he and Galfredic were bound by a very deep friendship. Eugene hesitates, recalling Galfredic calling him his one and only friend. Eugene awkwardly admits, well, you could say that, while internally cursing that bastard. Jevin promises their full support for a friend who ran all the way here. He then explains their policy. For the past 100 years, every attempt to subjugate the upper levels has ended with the entire party going missing. Because of that, once someone has been missing for over a month, they end the search and officially declare them dead. Jevin delivers the deadline. Sir Galfredic has now been missing for 3 weeks. If they can't find him within the remaining week, there will be no hope. Eugene immediately decides to depart. Jevin stops him, telling him to take it easy. He warns that a labyrinth isn't somewhere you stroll into like a city marketplace. He states he needs 3 days to prepare a subjugation party. He advises Eugene to rest and recover from his journey until then. Eugene thanks him. As he leaves, Jevin adds one more thing. Jevin mentions they recently hired a mage and will assign him to Eugene as additional support, claiming he will be quite useful. Outside, Eugene reflects on the conversation. Miriam complains about the spiky-haired jerk, Lugates, and his attitude. She calls the green onion guy, as Galfredic, lacking. She asks Eugene if he really believes what they said. She declares those guys were full of bullshit. Eugene agrees that things don't add up. He recalls Galfredic telling him he was going to have the credit for the dungeon opening raid recognized and receive an appointment from the Count of Evergrow. Eugene questions why Galfredic was put to another test, a labyrinth subjugation, when his appointment should have already been decided. He wonders why they changed their minds. More importantly, he knows Galfredic isn't the type to act on sudden impulses of greed. Even if he did go to the labyrinth, he would have formed a competent team and proceeded with safety in mind. Suddenly, a commotion catches Eugene's attention. A cultist is shouting about a prophecy. He preaches that on the day a red shadow is cast upon the moon, the goddess of victory will grow wrathful and wipe out the land. He claims the calamity has already begun. He cites repeated tremors near the labyrinth that have caused wild beasts to die in droves. The cultist continues, claiming a highly skilled knight disappeared in the labyrinth recently as well. Miriam realizes he is talking about Galfredic, the green onion dude. The cultist urges people to sprinkle fresh calf blood before the gate and offer a ritual feast. He promises that if they do, the Messiah will descend and save the land. Miriam calls it nonsense. Eugene observes that this is not the atmosphere of a normal town. He wonders if it is some kind of cult. Eugene connects the dots. He thinks about the wild beasts dying from earthquakes. He theorizes that part of the labyrinth might have collapsed, allowing roamers to slip out. If so, he wonders why Galfredic would be involved. He makes a decision. He tells Miriam they are heading for the labyrinth right now. He states that 3 days is too long. He plans to go ahead on his own and scout for Galfredic. Miriam is excited, suggesting they wipe them all out. Suddenly, a voice interrupts them. My, to think I'd see a vampire here. Eugene is shocked. The voice continues, noting that vampires were almost completely wiped out by the Holy Knights. Yet Eugene is walking around in broad daylight with brazenness. Eugene grabs the figure by the neck, demanding they state their identity. He asks how they recognized him so quickly. He threatens to crush their neck if they don't answer at once. The figure chokes, begging Eugene to let go so they can talk. They stammer out that they are a blood shadow. Miriam repeats the name, thinking it sounds familiar. Miriam shouts for him to stop. She warns him not to kill her, revealing that the woman is a mage. Eugene is surprised. Miriam explains she is from the Blood Shadow School, a school of mages that has served vampires for generations. Eugene is confused. He realizes the woman has fainted. The stranger scolds him for attacking without a word, saying he has to let go of someone's neck before they can answer. Eugene apologizes awkwardly. Miriam retorts that she spoke with a villain's tone first. The mage introduces herself properly as Sirenor Romari of the Blood Shadow School, which serves vampires as retainers. She explains that because of their school's affinity, they can immediately sense a vampire's presence. She says it's an honor to meet a member of the dark race in person. She reveals that young Master Jevin asked her to look for Sir Eugene. Eugene realizes this is the mage Jevin mentioned. Sirenor mentions hearing that Eugene and Sir Galfredic shared a very deep friendship. Eugene thinks to himself that when he finds Galfredic, he's going to sew his mouth shut. Sirenor reveals the truth. She also took part in the subjugation party. Eugene asks her to tell him the details of what happened back then at the time of Galfredic's disappearance. Sirenor explains that she needed monster byproducts, so she personally applied for the labyrinth subjugation announced by the Count of Evergrow. She explains that the Evergrow labyrinth is notorious for its difficulty, but since it was discovered 100 years ago, every area except the upper levels has been perfectly cleared. Everyone was moving forward with ease. However, while they were advancing deep inside, someone shouted about an earthquake. Suddenly, with a tremendous roar, the entire labyrinth began to shake. In the end, the ground she was standing on collapsed. She was about to fall, but Sir Galfredic, who had been guarding the rear, saved her and fell into the depths below in her place. Cyranoir says she barely managed to escape thanks to him. She expresses frustration that everyone but her was convinced that the earthquake happened because Sir Galfredic opened the door to the upper levels. She explains that since she survived thanks to him, she felt she at least had to tell Eugene, his close friend, what really happened. That's why she came looking for him. She adds that she never imagined he would be a vampire, though. Eugene notes that, as expected, Jevon's story doesn't match. He wonders if Jevon lied or if someone twisted the story. Cyranoir adds that there is actually something else she saw back then. She reveals that down in the depths where Galfredic fell, she saw an enormous eye drawn on the ground. Eugene repeats, "An eye?" Cyranoir asks if Eugene remembers the flyers strange cultists handed out in the plaza earlier. She says there was an image on those flyers that looked exactly like that eye. The text on the flyers speaks of the Messiah, descending and being welcomed with blood and flesh. Welcome him with all your heart. The narration closes with the ominous words of the cult. He who will lead us to salvation. A robed figure with a sinister smile is shown. A voice says he will soon awaken. Later the scene shows the preparations for the expedition are finally complete. Knight Lugates stands before the assembled forces. He looks over the group with a satisfied expression. He announces that the resupply of provisions is complete. He confirms that all the hired mercenaries and Templars have gathered in the designated spot. With everything in order, he declares to the group that they can depart at any time. Lugates turns his attention to Eugene. He smiles and addresses him directly. He asks Eugene how he is feeling about the mission. He asks if Eugene is excited at the thought of meeting his close friend again. Eugene stands calmly. He looks at Lugates and gives a pragmatic answer. He states that he would prefer it if there is no need to transport a corpse. Lugates bursts into laughter at the comment. He laughs loudly and says that Galfredic is not the sort to die easily anyway. He remarks that Sir Galfredic seems to be quite trusted. Eugene's internal thoughts are revealed. He thinks to himself that he had wanted to enter the labyrinth long ago. He admits that now that he knows Galfredic's disappearance wasn't an accident, he needs to watch this man's movements from up close. He calculates that Galfredic has endured for 3 weeks. He reasons that another 3 days won't kill him. A group of robed men approaches Eugene. They introduce themselves as Templars from a monastery under House Evergrow. One of them speaks with respect. He says it is truly an honor to fight alongside a devout knight like Eugene. The Templar continues speaking. He says they were deeply moved by how Eugene risked himself for his friend. He raises his voice and says that in the name of God, they should fight together. Floating beside Eugene, the spirit Miriam whispers to him. She laughs and says he's saying that to a vampire. Eugene maintains his composure. He replies to the Templars. He says, well, let's do our best. Lugates comments on the situation. He notes that normally, Templars only follow God's orders. He says it is rare for them to take an interest in a knight. Lugates speaks again. He suggests to Eugene that he could change his class to Holy Knight later if he wants. Miriam reacts with shock. She thinks, a vampire Holy Knight. Eugene calls out to someone. He asks Partek to step aside with him for a moment. Partek responds, yes, sir. Later in the dungeon, Lugates gives orders to the rest of the group. He tells them they will wait there for a bit. He warns them not to let their guard down. He instructs them to only take water and then immediately return to their positions. Eugene's group in middle floor of the labyrinth. Miriam looks around the cavern. She exclaims, whoa, this place is really amazing. She notes that there is so much water energy. Eugene analyzes the environment. He says that unlike a dungeon, this is an artificial space. He explains it is arranged in a way so that at the bare minimum, survival is possible. He continues his thought. He says that still, monsters live here. He muses that if the worst comes to pass, hiding in a labyrinth like this and living on might be possible. Lugates speaks up. He comments that it certainly is a fitting place for evil things to lurk and hide. He asks Eugene, don't you think so? Lugates compliments Eugene. He says Eugene's skills really are exceptional. He points out that not a single man died on the way here. Eugene ignores the compliment. He asks a question. He asks how much farther it is until the spot where Sir Galfredic disappeared. Lugates replies. He tells Eugene not to be so impatient. He asks, didn't you say you trust Sir Galfredic? Lugates steps closer to Eugene. He says that right now, the one Eugene should trust most is him. He asks if he hasn't already told him. He states that House Evergrow has fully grasped the traps of this labyrinth. Eugene looks at him. He counters Lugates' claim. He points out that despite that, there are still casualties every time. Legates chuckles darkly. He tells Eugene to think of them as offerings. He says they are offerings to hope that they will make it through this labyrinth alive. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake. Eugene reacts with surprise. Legates shouts to everyone. He says, "It's an earthquake?" He orders everyone to prepare themselves. He announces that the layout of the labyrinth is starting to change. The ground shakes violently. Legates speaks to Eugene amidst the chaos. He points to the floor. He says, "Right here, Sir Eugene." He explains the situation. He says this is the section where the walls constantly shift their structure. He adds that this is where the shortcut to the upper levels lies. Eugene looks at the ground. He asks where exactly the shortcut is supposed to be. Jevon smiles. He says, "Right where you're standing." The floor beneath Eugene crumbles and falls away. Eugene falls into the darkness. He looks around as he descends. Ramari wonders where this is. Eugene realizes something. He thinks, so it wasn't a naturally occurring earthquake after all. He puts the pieces together. He realizes Galfredic was framed. He understands that Galfredic was caught in a trap that this bastard had already seen through. Eugene lands on the ground. He wonders what on earth Legates' goal is. Ramari looks into the distance. She spots a figure lying on the ground. He shouts, "Sir Eugene, over there." Eugene runs toward the figure. It is Galfredic. He is lying on the throne. Eugene calls his name. He checks Galfredic. He sees that he is still alive. He thinks that if they get him out and treat him immediately, he will survive. Miriam calls out to Eugene. She says, "Eugene." She warns him that something is off there. She explains her feeling. She says she has been feeling it for a while. She says that deep down below, something feels out of place. A strong wind blows through the cavern. Ramari covers her face. She asks where this wind came from. A massive creature steps out from the shadows. It is a minotaur. Ramari looks at it in terror. She stammers, "Is that a minotaur?" She asks how it is here. Eugene shouts orders. She tells herself, "Ramari, protect Sir Galfredic." The minotaur roars and swings a massive weapon. Eugene moves to intercept. Through the dust, Eugene holding his ground, but then he does something unexpected. Instead of retreating or dodging, he moves toward the beast. The impact is tremendous. Ramari screams. She's thrown back by the impact. In the chaos, she sees Eugene moving toward the beast instead of retreating. And Eugene sees Minotaur, that again swing the weapon. Eugene shouts, "Wait, what are you doing?" The Minotaur roars and swings its massive axe. The impact is earth-shattering. Ramari screams, as the force of the collision sends shock waves through the room. In the destruction, Galfredic falls to deeper floor, but Eugene charges to catch up to Galfredic, but Ramari stops Eugene with magic circle. Eugene loses his mind. Eugene shouts, "What the hell are you doing?" Ramari tries to reason with him over the roar of battle. "Sir Eugene, that's a minotaur. It's considered strong, even among high-rank monsters," she yells. "Even a vampire could die to it." Eugene glances back at her, his red eyes glowing. "You've overstepped your boundaries, Ramari," he warns, his voice icy. Ramari flinches but holds her ground. "I'm sorry, Sir Eugene," she insists, desperate to save him. "But I can't just stand by and watch a vampire charge head first to his death." She pleads with him to use reason. If you charge at a minotaur recklessly, your chances of winning are slim. If you truly wish to save Sir Galfredic, you need to assess the situation once you're calmer. Eugene stops and looks at the minotaur again. Ramari speaks with disdain. She says, "But seriously, a minotaur?" Ramari questions the threat. She asks if this labyrinth is really that big in scale. She says he thought they would encounter a cyclops in a worst-case scenario. Eugene clicks his tongue, but behind him trap opens. Then, he turns his attention back. A voice remarks to Ramari that it looks like I underestimated you. He admits he didn't think she could use earth magic. The voice is none other than Legates. Legates notes that she barely survived the fall thanks to Galfredic, but she is holding her own now. "I thought you were just an eccentric who could make chimeras at best." Legates stands with a look of cold calculation, clicking his tongue in annoyance. He sneers, his eyes darting toward the mage, Ramari. Legates' voice dripping with accusation. "In truth," he says, his voice dropping to a dangerous low, "you didn't really want to save Galfredic, did you?" Ramari gasps, "Ugh. Back then, it all happened so fast," she stammers. Legates winces, a hand going to his side as if struck by a physical blow. "So it was you. Eugene exclaims, pointing an accusing finger. You're the one who turned Galfredic into that state. Lugates' expression shifts into a chilling, mocking smile. Oh dear, he replies, feigning innocence. I only brought you to him because you looked so desperate to see your dear friend again. Lugates glares at him, his composure cracking. You're much ruder than the rumors say, Sir Eugene. Lugates grabs Eugene's hand with his physical power. The air suddenly grows heavy, charged with a terrifying pressure. Eugene with an intense, predatory focus. Eugene moves back with a blur of motion along with glows of Lugates. That's... Ramari gasps. Eugene analyzes the sheer force radiating from the night. That brute strength just now isn't your own, huh? He deduces, his voice trembling slightly. Romari's mind working furiously to categorize the anomaly before her. Sir Eugene, she calls out, her tone turning analytical and accusatory. That pattern is definitely a magic formula that lets you inherit someone else's power. She explains the history of the technique with disdain. At first it was used for passing power between humans, but once they began inheriting the power of non-human beings, it was completely banned. She labels it with finality, a forbidden spell. Lugates laughs, a harsh, dismissive sound. Forbidden spell? How foolish, he scoffs. He looks down on Eugene with utter contempt. That's just a cowardly excuse made up by those who want to monopolize power. Lugates steps closer, his eyes burning with a fanatical intensity. You still don't get it? He whispers. We are the chosen ones. When despair descends upon the world, we will be the ones chosen by God to survive. Eugene nods slowly, processing this twisted philosophy. I see, he says. So you beat Galfredic by borrowing another's strength, and then you boasted to me as if it were your own. Eugene's patience snaps. Fine, he growls. Energy begins to swirl around him, dark and ominous. First, I'll make sure you understand just where you really stand. The atmosphere grows heavy, the very air vibrating with the density of Eugene's power. Ramari watches, sweat beading on her forehead. What incredible power, she stammers. She questions her own senses. Can an ordinary vampire really unleash energy like this? But then, a sly, confident smirk curls Lugates' lips. Well, it seems like I'm not the only one who's been hiding his strength, Lugates shouts, his voice ringing with triumph. Lugates raises his hand to deliver the finishing blow. Before Eugene can react, the ground beneath him gives way. Unfortunately for you, I have no intention of holding back here, Lugates declares coldly. Ah, Ramari cries out as gravity takes hold. As she plummets into the dark abyss opening up beneath her, Lugates' voice echoes from above. Didn't I tell you? He taunts. Every trap in this labyrinth has already been figured out. Now fall nicely to your death, Jan Eugene, Lugates commands. Before the fall, Eugene shouts at Ramari to make magic circle. Eugene leaped from the circle, forgive a final blow. The blow cracked through the wall and hit on the cheek of Lugates. Darkness swallows Eugene. The sound of crumbling stone and rushing wind fills his ears. He falls deep into the bowels of the labyrinth, the light from above shrinking to a pinprick before vanishing completely. High above, at the edge of the pit, Lugates dusts off his hands, looking down into the gloom. Jan Eugene, he muses, his voice echoing in the silence. I heard you were strong, but what you just showed me went far beyond what I imagined. He admits the truth to himself with chilling pragmatism. If I had faced you head-on, I couldn't have guaranteed my victory, he confesses. He glances back toward where Galfredic had been trapped. Using Galfredic as bait instead of killing him outright really was the right choice, he decides with a satisfied smile. He turns his gaze toward the depths, his eyes gleaming with a sinister purpose. At last, he whispers, the final sacrifice will be offered. Down in the darkness, Ramari groans in pain. She gasps. Her magic is failing her. I'm sorry, Sir Eugene, she cries out terrified. I can't form my magic circle anymore. Eugene lands hard nearby, stumbling as he regains his balance. Wait, Sir Eugene, where are you going? Ramari shouts, seeing him move away. Ramari clutches her head, frustration boiling over. She yells, what kind of damned ordeal is this? She berates herself for getting involved. I really should have just pretended to be oblivious and ran, she mutters bitterly. I stepped in because it felt too ominous, and now what the hell is all this? She takes a breath, forcing herself to focus. Eugene turns back to Ramari, his red eyes piercing the gloom. He points to the unconscious Galfredic nearby. Hey, you, he demands. Can you save him? Ramari looks down, her shoulders slumping. Healing magic isn't really my specialty, she admits weakly. Eugene's glare intensifies. That's not an answer to my question. Terrified, Ramari stammers. I'll do my best. Suddenly, Miriam, Eugene's spirit companion, flies back to him. Eugene, she calls out urgently. I checked around, and there's no exit here at all. Eugene frowns. No walls we can tunnel through either? Yeah, Miriam confirms. This looks like the farthest end of the labyrinth, a sealed boss room. She hovers closer, her face serious. More importantly, this is what I wanted to tell you earlier. Miriam gestures to the vast chamber around them. There's so much water energy here I thought I could do something, she explains. But even as a water spirit, I can't control any of what's in here. She points to the center of the room. A massive, horrifying pattern is drawn on the floor in fresh, crimson liquid, especially that pool of blood that feels out of place. Eugene looks at the pattern. It forms a giant, grotesque eye. Eyes, he mutters. So this is what Ramari saw that was drawn deep underground. He turns to Miriam. Why can't you control this, Miriam? Miriam shudders. By principle, I can only control the blood of the dead, she whispers. Which means the owner of this blood is still alive. The realization chills the air. The blood on the floor is alive. It is pulsating with a dark, ancient malice. Miriam, do your best to find us a way out, Eugene orders, gripping his weapon. Okay. Miriam stammers, flying off to search the ceiling. Eugene turns his attention to the immediate threat. Galfredic still can't move, he notes. A massive shadow looms over them. The monster of the deep, a colossal minotaur, stands ready to crush them. Eugene steps between the monster and his fallen friend. First, I have to make sure that thing can't move freely, he decides. Monster launches attack forward, a streak of black and red against the gray stone. Right now, Eugene roars, swinging his blade with all his might. He aims for a crippling blow, hoping to hamstring the beast or sever a tendon. He grunts as the blade connects. Sparks fly. The sound of metal screeching against something harder than steel echoes through the room. Eugene lands, skidding back. He looks at his sword, then at the monster's hide. There isn't even a cut, so even a normal sword can't leave a scratch on it, he realizes with frustration. The minotaur's skin is like armor plating. Eugene grits his teeth. He cannot retreat. In that case, I'll have to make do with this for now, he resolves. He tightens his grip, channeling his internal power, the vampire's strength surging through his muscles. With that, he makes his blade by the blood. He attacks again, faster, harder. Slash. This time the blade bites. Blood sprays. But Eugene frowns. Too shallow. It's a wound, but barely a scratch to a creature of this size. Monster attacks fall on Eugene. He lands back near Galfredic, breathing heavily. The situation is dire. Ramari looks down at the unconscious knight. Hey, Sir Galfredic, she calls out, shaking him roughly. Come on, snap out of it. Your dear friend is in danger, you know? Eugene glances at Ramari, who is cowering near the wall. So Ramari was telling the truth after all, he thinks. The danger here is real, and it is overwhelming. The minotaur roars, the sound vibrating in their chests. Damn. Eugene curses, wiping sweat from his brow. High-rank monsters are on a completely different level of strength. Just then, a weak groan comes from the floor. The minotaur sees the Ramari and Galfredic and make blood spike attack them. But before that happens, Eugene turns quickly and blocks the attack with his own body. Sir Eugene, Ramari gasps. Eugene's eyes fluttering open. He tries to push himself up, his face contorted in agony. Eugene looks at his trembling hands. Powerlessness, he whispers, his voice thick with despair. It's a feeling I've grown endlessly familiar with for over more than 10 years. He stares at the minotaur, the weight of his failure crushing him. I should be used to it. He murmurs, tears gathering in his eyes. And yet, why? Why does it hurt even more than it did back then? Eugene looks up at Galfredic, his face a mask of blood with utter defeat. Why? He sobs. The atmosphere in the sealed boss room is suffocating, heavy with the scent of blood and impending doom. Ramari, the mage of the Blood Shadow School, trembles violently. Her face is pale, eyes wide with the raw terror of someone staring death in the face. She screams at Eugene, her voice cracking with desperation. "This is why I warned you. Sir Eugene," she cries out, pointing at the towering monstrosity before them. "Even if you're a vampire, there's no way you could defeat something like that." She looks around the enclosed chamber, panic seizing her chest. There's nowhere to run to either," she whimpers, realizing they are trapped in a cage with a beast that defies logic. The reality of her mortality crashes down on her. "Am I really going to die like this?" she thinks, tears welling in her eyes. In her final moments of despair, her thoughts turn to her master. "I'm sorry, master. Your disciple wasn't good enough." Suddenly, a sound cuts through her panic. Cough, cough. It is Galfredic. He is battered, kneeling on the ground, but he is still alive. He wipes blood from his lip, his expression one of bitter regret rather than fear. "Goodness," he mutters, his voice raspy. "I got you involved in this too." Ramari sees a glimmer of hope, or perhaps just a survival instinct kicking in. "Hey, we're up next, so we should run while we can," she urges him. But Galfredic shakes his head grimly. "We can't," he replies, Lugates, the territorial knight who orchestrated this nightmare. A dark realization settles over him. "That son of a bitch. Use me as bait to get Sir Eugene." Galfredic's voice cuts in, weak but filled with self-loathing. Galfredic, lying broken on the floor, continues to speak, his voice thick with shame. "He was after Sir Eugene from the start," he wheezes. "He blames himself entirely. It's because I went around saying that I'm his friend that I ended up being a burden like this." He lets out a dry, pained chuckle. "This is all my fault for being weak." He looks up at Eugene, his eyes filled with a mixture of adoration and sorrow. "It was a relationship that could have ended as quickly as it began," he confesses softly. "But because of your inner strength as well as your physical strength, I was instantly charmed." Galfredic reaches out a trembling hand, grasping at the empty air as if trying to hold onto a fading dream. "I didn't want to let go of this opportunity," he whispers. "I wanted to become someone strong enough to stand by your side." His hand falls, his strength leaving him. "Well, it's all over now, though." "Wait, Sir Galfredic!" Ramari shouts, seeing the light fading from the knight's eyes. Galfredic throw Ramari out of danger place. Ramari cries out in agony. He turns his gaze to Eugene one last time, offering a final plea. "Please forgive me, Sir Eugene," he sobs. "If I were to reincarnate, I hope I'm reborn as a knight that serves you, my friend." Galfredic stands tall in front of Eugene. To save from the monster, the attack lands on Galfredic. That sound of flesh being pierced echoes through the silent room. Around them, the air begins to shift. A strange pressure starts to emanate from Eugene, heavy and ominous. Ramari gasps, her eyes widening in disbelief. "What?" she stammers. She watches as a dark, crimson aura begins to envelop Eugene. Sir Eugene's body is going through some kind of change. The air crackles with energy, vibrating with a power that feels ancient and terrifying. Ramari looks around and notices something even more disturbing. The blood that is spilled across the battlefield, the monster's blood is moving. The blood puddles in the surroundings are reacting to Sir Eugene, she realizes, a chill running down her spine. She stares at the back of the man she thought she knew. He's definitely different from ordinary vampires, she thinks. A nervous, almost hysterical laugh escapes her lips. She speaks to her absent teacher in her mind. "Master, I think I might have just witnessed something historical just now." The sheer power on display marks a turning point in history for vampire kind. The scene focuses on the magical phenomenon occurring on the floor. But then, the situation shifts again. Ramari blinks. The blood on the ground isn't just floating, it's disappearing. "The blood puddles have suddenly gotten a lot shallower," she exclaims. She looks at the Minotaur. The massive wounds Eugene had inflicted earlier are knitting themselves back together at an impossible speed. "I know that it's a high-ranking monster, but it heals way too fast," she observes with horror. "It's like it's being actively healed through magic." Ramari's mind races, connecting the dots. If its critical injuries were healed right after one of the eyes opened and the blood puddles got shallower, she thinks, looking at the ominous eye patterns drawn on the floor. Is this labyrinth using blood as an ingredient to heal the monster? She notices a stream of red liquid flowing from one of the eye's symbols. There's blood coming from one of the eyes. Eugene stands slowly, his eyes glowing with a fierce, crimson light. He has realized the truth as well. I knew it, he says, his voice cold and authoritative. The owner of this labyrinth isn't the Minotaur. Eugene begins to speak, his voice echoing with a terrifying understanding of the place they are trapped in. The hundreds of people who had gone missing. The labyrinth's environment, which was built for long-term survival of humans. He lists, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. They were basically eaten by the labyrinth. He looks up, addressing the room itself. This entire labyrinth is a god. That those guys were worshipping and sacrificing offerings to the narrative voice shifts to the fanatical perspective of the cultists and echoes Lugate's madness. God hath been enraged, the voice proclaims in the darkness. He decrees that this land be eradicated. The only salvation in their twisted logic is the Messiah. Messiah, come forth, the voice beckons. Bring unto us the reign of salvation and mercy to this land. Lugate's eyes burn brighter. Yes, dear God, become even more wrathful. Run wild with rage, he taunts the entity. I have opened your eye. Now it's time for you to listen to my prayers. In the room, the process completes. All the blood puddles have been absorbed, Ramari shouts. The floor is dry. The monster is fully healed. The healed monster, or perhaps a new horror birth from the ritual, begins to move. Ew, it groans. Wait, where do you think you're going? Ramari shouts, seeing the creature turn away. Ramari is confused and terrified. A high-ranking monster escaping the dungeon. She wonders aloud, bewildered. I've never heard of such a thing happening. Panic sets in as the room begins to shake violently. What do I do? There's a town nearby, she worries, thinking of the monster reaching the surface. Sir Eugene, I found an exit, Miriam calls out. She pauses, confused. What the hell? There's already an exit here. The path forward is open, but the destruction is imminent. The ceiling begins to crumble. The place is collapsing. Miriam screams, Sir Eugene, we gotta get out of here. She stops mid-sentence, her breath catching. She looks at Eugene. He is standing still amidst the destruction, looking down at Galfredic. Miriam gasps. Sir Eugene, Miriam whispers. Eugene is standing still, his expression unreadable but heavy with emotion. Ramari is shocked by what she sees. Is a vampire grieving the death of a mere human? She wonders, interpreting his intensity for grief over Galfredic's condition. She reflects on the strangeness of it all. I've never seen a vampire that hides his identity by pretending to be a knight and forming a bond with humans, she thinks, deeply moved. It defies all logic, especially for someone who possesses such evidently noble blood too. The night's silence is violently torn apart by a blinding flash of purple energy, an explosion of pure dark magic. With a deafening screech, a massive, winged silhouette erupts from the depths. It is the Minotaur. The labyrinth can no longer contain its rage. Its wings generate shockwaves, signaling doom for the world above. Gravity reclaims the beast, and it crashes with a bone-rattling impact that shakes the sleeping land for miles. Rising from the crater, the creature stands wreathed in shadows and corrupted flames, purple energy crackling across its skin like electricity. It is a walking disaster of magic. A giant, singular eye burns from its chest with hellish light, unblinkingly searching for prey. High above, a blood-red moon hangs heavy, bathing the landscape in a sickly crimson glow that mirrors the monster's terrifying intent. The atmosphere in the sealed chamber is heavy with ancient secrets and the metallic scent of blood. Ramari breaks the silence with a question that shifts the entire paradigm of their current predicament. She looks at him with a new level of understanding and asks, Sir Eugene, have you ever heard of the origin vampires? Her voice echoes slightly in the damp. Ramari continues her explanation, her tone filled with a mix of awe and realization. She explains that origins are the highest-ranked and most noble of all vampires. She admits that she didn't know when she first met him, but now, seeing his power manifest, it is undeniable. She declares, you possess the blood of an origin vampire. She then reveals a crucial ability possessed by his bloodline. One more thing, she adds, raising a finger. An origin can resurrect someone who recently died to make them their subordinate. Eugene's eyes widen in shock. The possibility of saving Galfredic hangs in the air. Ramari assumes he knows the method, and Eugene confirms it grimly. Of course I do, he replies. He describes the visceral process. I bite the neck of my target, then give them my own blood. However, Eugene hesitates, his expression darkening. But if I do that, he trails off. He confesses that he has done this once before. The result was tragic. The subject's mind couldn't handle the transformation, shattering under the pressure. Ramari nods solemnly, acknowledging that most humans are indeed too fragile for such power. Yet, Ramari offers a glimmer of hope. She suggests that it might be different for Sir Galfredic. She recalls the teachings of her master, stating that if a person possesses immense mental fortitude, they can take in an origin's blood and keep their sanity. Furthermore, they would retain their abilities from when they were human. She urges Eugene, I believe it's worth a try. Ramari looks down at dying Galfredic. She identifies the core problem. Galfredic is an honorable knight. To a man who lives by such a code, being given a second life as a vampire might be considered a grave insult. Ramari worries that if the transformation succeeds, Galfredic might despise his new nature and end up attacking them. Ramari asks for his decision. What do you think, Sir Eugene? Eugene sighs, admitting the complexity of their relationship. Well, I've never told him what I was, he says. Because of his secrecy, there is no way for him to know how Galfredic truly feels about vampires. However, as he looks at the life fading from his friend, his resolve hardens. Eugene decides that hesitation is useless. I guess there's no other way, he murmurs. He leans down, his face close to Galfredic's neck. He decides to take the gamble rather than let his friend die. Then to just ask him, he concludes. With a swift movement, Eugene sinks his fangs into Galfredic's neck. Crunch! The sound of skin breaking is loud in the quiet room. Galfredic's body jolts, a guttural sound of cook escaping his throat as the connection is made. Immediately, Eugene realizes something is different. What? He thinks, alarmed. My blood is going into him too quickly. He tries to pull back, but he is locked in place. I can't take my teeth out. A mysterious voice announces the start of the process, commencing the inheritance ritual. Eugene's eyes shoot open in shock. The ancient laws of blood magic take effect, binding the two together. The voice declares that the subject is now the Lord's possession and that under the ritual of blood, the subject's soul will belong to the Lord. Galfredic groans in agony. Ugh, as his very being is rewritten. The ritual concludes with the proclamation that all of the subject's powers shall also belong to the Lord. This is the inheritance, the voice finalizes. Energy swirls violently around them as the transformation takes hold. Meanwhile, outside the labyrinth, chaos reigns. The peaceful village has turned into a nightmare. Get away from here, someone screams. Panic spreads like wildfire as villagers flee from a massive threat. That's a roamer. Run, they cry. The terrified citizens realize the source of the horror. The labyrinth broke down. Dust and debris fill the air as the monsters spill out into the world. Amidst the destruction, a single figure stands calm and collected. It is Lugates. He watches the carnage with a twisted sense of satisfaction. Finally, it's here, he whispers to himself. He believes the moment has arrived for him to receive his reward for the sacrifices he offered to the labyrinth. His internal monologue reveals the depth of his madness. He thinks about how the humans running in fear will never know that he and the labyrinth planned all of this. His plan is diabolical. Once the village's despair level reaches an all-time high due to the Minotaur's attack, he intends to step in. I will appear and take the Minotaur down, he plots. He views this stage heroism as his just reward for feeding innocent lives to the dungeon. By exploiting human nature to seek salvation in deep despair, he plans to become a messiah who saves everyone. He looks at the suffering around him with cold eyes, silently urging them to die. Despair more. Lugates is obsessed with his delusion. He needs the tragedy to be absolute so that he can be worshipped as a savior. Suddenly, the focus shifts to a specific tragedy unfolding nearby. A mother cries out, Eutychus! A young boy, Mom! He screams, paralyzed by fear. The massive beast raises its mouth, ready to crush the helpless child. The blow falls. But instead of the sickening sound of impact on flesh, there is a loud, metallic clash. Something, or someone, has stopped the wolf's attack. A hand has caught the massive monster's head mid-swing. Grab! The force of the block sends shockwaves through the air. Lugates stares in disbelief. Standing there, blocking the monster with impossible strength, is Eugene. Eugene! Lugates gasps, his composure cracking. What is he doing here? Lugates' mind races, trying to make sense of the impossibility. He thought the Minotaur had absorbed Eugene's blood and become stronger. He is certain he offered Eugene as the last sacrifice, so he should be dead. How is he alive and here right now? He wonders, panic setting in. He considers the terrifying possibility. Did he suddenly become stronger on the brink of death? If that is true, he asks himself with dread, then what the hell is he? Eugene's voice interrupts his internal spiral, looking at with disdain. What a face you're making, Lugates, Eugene remarks. He asks coldly, does Sir Jevon know you've caused all this mess? Lugates turns, startled. Eugene continues, dismissive of Lugates' excuses. Well, not that it matters now, he says. He declares, you will pay the price for your sins right here. A massive impact shatters the ground, sending clouds of dust and debris billowing into the air. The sheer power of the attack collapsed the building. From the swirling smoke, Lugates' chilling laugh echoes through the dust. That it is wild, manic, and full of confidence. Galfredic steps forward. He is alive, but he is changed. His eyes glow with a new, dark power, and his presence is overwhelming. He grins at the terrified Lugates. Hey, did you miss me? He asks mockingly. Galfredic cracks his knuckles, ready for violence. It's time for me to get back at you for humiliating me in the tournament, he growls. The resurrection has been a success, and the honorable knight is now a vengeful vampire. He stares down his enemy, eager for the fight. I'm sure you're ready to pay the price of having fucked me over in the past, right? Heretic Lugates,